So hello, Mike.
Hello, how are you doing?
Not too bad, my friend, not too bad. Thank you for spending the time to be with us today. It is
Yes.
appreciated, and thank you for kind of, suggesting a time that wasn't going to mean I was going to be up till sort of 4 a.m. given the time difference.
I know, right? I mean, I kind of thought, well, maybe Mike's, he's a composer and he lives in a dark room. Maybe 4 a.m. is kind of his best operating zone. But
Absolutely. So
I thought it'd be best to get it out of the way before it's Saturday, and I got some ciders in the fridge. So,
it's the launch tonight, isn't it? It's the space launch.
Second attempt of the SpaceX launch attempt. So people might be watching this being confused, thinking, oh, maybe this is recorded today on the third launch. But nope, today.
We're doing it on that day. So I think
the second launch.
For me and you, I mean, I think it's going to be, we get this done, we relax, and then we've got some sort of tea. I might get some ciders myself and kind of sit back and relax and take that in. So I'm looking forward to that.
It should be interesting. It's so futuristic. I can't believe it. Those spacesuits they wear. It's like I don't know if they chose to brand it like that to make it look so.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because I suppose space is like a. I love space. Like my whole company name is Space.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's that kind of fits into the whole film thing as well and the cinematics of it. But I think it's it wouldn't surprise me because if they did choose to brand it based on that, then good on them because it's cool as hell.
It's private enterprise, right? Like it's
absolutely, and they start selling mugs and. Like
I think they already are. They'll have the same lady who displays your Aurora Clips t-shirts.
That's it. Oh yeah, I like that. You saw I found that lady, did you? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's very kind of her to keep wearing different shirts.
Absolutely, it's so appreciative of me, mate. And the funny thing with that was there was actually someone who kind of, where did you find the model? I'm like, the internet these days, you can sort of put things on models is fine, but the fact it looked that way was a good thing, right? But that's cool, man. I'm really excited for that, and I think that's a cool, that's Saturday end of the month thing, and it's just something that's I'm definitely going to be there watching that with you, mate. Just in different time zones, I suppose.
Yeah, so I don't know if we made it clear yet, but I'm in Toronto in Canada, so I am 5 hours behind the UK.
5 hours, yes. It's what 10 a.m. 10ish for you. It's about 3 for me. So it's a nice balance. Thanks for joining me so early, mate. I mean, I was still asleep at 10. I'm not going to lie to you. Cool. So so Mike meets Mike. We've got that bit. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike, and kind of what's been your story so far?
Yeah, so I'll start basic and then we'll fill it in later. But I work as a boom operator in the film and TV industry, which is part of the wider sound department. The boom operator is responsible for all microphone placement on a set, and they run the floor. By the floor, I mean the set for the sound mixer, who's the head of department.
Perfect. So, I mean, is that... I suppose we were thinking about this because I was thinking about this earlier, just when I was writing out the questions and thinking, well, there's so much I could ask Mike. I mean, me and you, if I remember about years ago, I remember kind of like playing around with bass and I remember you touched on a couple of things like playing around with speakers, and I believe I was watching South Park the other day. I seem to remember us sort of annoying all our parents and grandparents trying to play that South Park CD at like Christmas time. What is this rubbish on sacrilege or whatever?
They probably bought it for us. I mean, we weren't buying CDs at that age.
Very true. I don't know where it came from, mate. I really don't, because it's not something my mother would have, not knowingly, would have bought me. I'll tell you that. We found it somehow, but I mean, was it always clear to you, I suppose, that sound was going to be your thing, or did you find that, do you think, while studying?
I had a bit of a meander because I definitely, we as kids were really into speakers and we were always playing around with little things and, there was all these little things going on. And then I, like you, fell into playing guitars. Like I wasn't very good, but I played bass guitar and the occasional acoustic guitar and things like that. And so I had this direction of, maybe moving into sound recording in a studio or something like that. But we're talking early 2000s here. So also at the time when I was, in my early teens, I guess, my mum had bought a video camera. So I started making, filming little things with a friend and just enjoyed that aspect. So when it came to choosing A-levels, I chose music technology, media production, and I thought, well, I better throw something serious in there that would fit in with those two categories. So I did physics too, Well, physics was a write-off. I mean, A-levels were not the choice for me because I'm hands-on. Luckily, I had great teachers and the courses were pretty hands-on, but yeah, physics fell by the wayside.
But look, man, at least you tried to throw one in there, and I suppose it did make sense. I mean, at least you understood the pressure of the cone of a speaker, you know.
Yeah.
You understood you understood phase for your physics, you know.
Well, I do now. I don't know if I did then, but I do now.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. But I think it's kind of like, because I've done like, when I say I've got a little bit of boom experience, it's like 2 projects, both of which never made the light of day. You know, they were both sort of small, they were like uni projects really, and I sort of bought a cheap stag boom pole, you know, and sort of threw a mic on the top of it, and then there's me sort of, you know, running around the forest sort of attached to this girl who I just met, you know, by a cable about 2 meters long. Ridiculous, man. I'm almost falling over, but it's good fun. I've got good memories of it. And I'd imagine your arms are sort of a little stronger these days, Mike.
Yeah, I think my shoulders are definitely bigger. It's not really a strength. I mean, strength helps, don't get me wrong, but technique is probably more the key. And I definitely struggled a lot in the early days. And I still find myself struggling now, especially and I'm sure it's the same with what you do, as technology progresses, we push the boundaries of what we do. So now we shoot digital more than we do film. And so if we wanted to, we could run for half an hour, easy, no questions, probably longer.
This is the craziness with it, because it's kind of, I've always been focused pretty much in the sound realm, like, and despite having an interest, because I'm kind of like that, if I'm working on something, I get a bit attached to everything. So, but now with doing this podcast, which came through this lockdown, really, you know, I've done my YouTube videos, which has been literally a Logitech webcam for years, like just 1080p. But now I'm starting to, you know, the conversation we had earlier about keep it cheap, you know, don't kind of spend unless you need to spend. I'm using my iPhone as well, you know, as a second camera. I mean, this mic, this Rode, I actually bought for boom work, and now it's
I remember you saying
my broadcast mic, you know, for this. But what I was getting frustrated because all these cameras with these DSLRs with the kind of like, you know, the 30-minute limit. I'm thinking, why do I need why is there a 30-minute limit? So it's me trying to understand that really what I'm doing is probably broadcast, you know, and a lot of that footage I would imagine would go into a camera mixer and it'd be actually recorded in a server, not on the cameras probably aren't even rolling.
Yeah, it's just a sensor that goes, you know.
Exactly, but then it makes sense to me because I think did Mike run around for half an hour, or was it like 2 minutes cut, 10 minutes cut, 1 minute cut, 3 minutes cut?
I've definitely run around for half an hour before, but more. It takes a norm, you know, max probably 5 minutes now. Historically, film you were limited to 4 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the size of the magazine on the camera.
It's just,
it's a crazy job. I don't know why I don't know how I ended up in it. And I guess as I'll answer more of your questions, maybe we'll figure out how.
We'll find out. But it is incredible. I mean, I only recently learned that, you know, IMAX cameras, I think the battery, lasts 13 minutes. How you fit, you know? But then I suppose those shots just aren't that long. It must unless your director's just, no, I want to keep rolling.
Well, I've never shot on IMAX. I'd have to look into that. But quite often the onboard battery on a camera isn't really enough to do much than just support it for, like you say, like 10 minutes. But they often then have a bigger battery
just rigged,
remotely attached, that might be carried around by a grip or something like that. So
got ya.
It's But so when I chose music technology as one of my classes, and this is probably now, we're talking like 2003, and you know, we're about the same age, we kind of know what was happening then. And I remember probably the first class I went to, we all sat down there and they said, you know, everyone bring your instrument along. So I'm there with my bass, and I look across the classroom and there was maybe like 7 other people holding guitars, and I thought, how can anyone make a career out of this?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, we're all here trying to do the same thing. And not only that, I got to do, you know, it was great in some respects because I think I just looked it up online to make sure I knew what it was. In the class we had, as well as, I forget the name of Cubase. We had Cubase on the computer, but we also had these Yamaha MD8s. It was a mini disc multi-track recorder that I used to be able to take home, and we could record songs at home, which was great. But it also made me aware that recording studios were clearly not going to survive.
No.
I was like, apart from obviously, you know, a few select ones. I mean, in Plymouth, I think there was one big recording studio I knew of, and several of my friends started going there because they were running courses, you know. They were doing education, you know, GMVQs.
Which is probably it's probably going to be the best way to learn.
I think it is too, but I also knew that, well, hold on a sec, if the biggest recording studio in town is having to make money by teaching courses, then
what's happening?
There's no work for the people when they finish the course. Now, don't get me wrong, I think some of those people will have, you know, if you're very good at your job and if it's a very good studio, there's always going to be work for you. But it became obvious to me that whilst I loved sound, it was going to be hard for me to make a career out of it. So I focused more on media and film. Absolutely. So off I went. I went off to college to study media further. And I remember very early on, we did the sound course, you know, just an afternoon of sound. And I was pretty much the only person on the course that was like, well, yeah, this is obvious, you know, plug this in here, yada, yada. And, you know, and then I thought to myself, hold on a minute, I think I found my niche.
Absolutely.
You know?
I think I was talking to my mate the other day about it, and I think a lot of it is like logistics. It's tracing that signal path, and if you're kind of a bit weird, like I think I am, you know, and you're actually interested, like you're talking about the studio setup, you know, obviously you've got the live room, so something's going in through an XLR, it's going into that desk, and it's coming out through a patch bay, and if you're kind of interested, I think in the logistics of what those things are, and you're kind of like, you know, if you're talking about like compression, like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. You know, it's limiting the dynamic range of the. But some people at my course were just like, what? They're just, and I think part of it is probably interest as well. They want to play their guitar, and that's it. And they're not.
That's what I noticed in my class. You know, when everyone was there playing guitar, and I'm thinking they just want to play guitar.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I'm more interested in how that sound gets onto that record or gets into that system, and that's I think you're absolutely right, mate. It's and you think you made a good step. So you started this in Plymouth in terms of like the college.
Yeah, this is where I was like this Plymouth is where I mostly grew up, but obviously I'm from Surrey, exactly where you are, and the rest of our family. Yeah. But I went back to Guildford to do college. And while I was there, and while I kind of, you know, I had a great time, and I was still making great short films and little documentaries at the college there. But I still thought, well, maybe this sound thing is a good way to go. And for some unknown reason, through my letterbox came a pamphlet from the National Film and Television School, and in there was a course, sound recording for film and television. So I thought, well, maybe this is worth a punt. You know, maybe this is a way to put me in the direction that I might want to go. So I applied, and that's a 15-month course all about sound recording, and you do it alongside people studying directing and producing and cinematography. Amazing, yeah. And you make a lot of films, and you just get on and do it. And then not only that, having gone there, that gave me, you know, the resume. I think at the time we were a class of 7, and there's pretty much only 7 people a year coming out of there. Maybe a bit more now, and that, you know, launched me off into a film and TV career.
Which is, I mean, there's so much to be said about university in that respect, where I think it's necessary and it's not necessary. For me and my course, it kind of didn't. Whereas you said that you were kind of there with directors and producers and people wanting to do all different types of disciplines within the industry, it gave you guys, from my view, the opportunity to actually experiment and meet all these different disciplines and kind of learn how to balance those ego faders, if you like. Oh, it's the producer, okay, you know. Whereas with me, it was very much like my third year, there was 4 of us on the course down in Brighton, in this kind of like, you know, old classroom, looking at Frank Zappa notes and stuff, and it's all a bit crazy. But it didn't really give me. There was no real opportunity to like work with an orchestra or no kind of links. All that stuff I had to do afterwards as essentially no one. So I didn't kind of I didn't get that kind of post uni. This is now what I've got to do. Yes. And I think that's why in many ways I tracked back into, like we were talking about, recording the bands and things like that. A lot of it from home. Now I'm starting to make a bit of cash. I am going back to the studio, especially for drums, or if we've got a player like a really good solo violinist. But you can do that. I mean, I could record a solo violin here in this room.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right in that. And I think that school, the film school, is like, lots of people have asked me, well, where do you think I should go? And I've said, honestly, don't go to a Brighton University, or go to that, because that's where you're going to get the actual links and the real life experience, which you're testament to, mate, really.
Yeah, and I remember the composers there, that they'd have a day with an orchestra where they could conduct an orchestra.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is, you need that. You're paying what, $9,000 a year now, the kids now. It's like, I got good at mocking stuff up, and that's great, and that's how the industry is now.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself fortunate to have been probably one of the last people to go through the whole educational system without paying obscene amounts of money.
Same, I was on that 3,000 whatever it was a year,
and,
not the 9.
And I found, especially with my media course, and to some extent the film school, but you could easily just sit in these places and do nothing. You could pretty much just tick over and just tread water.
Sure.
Whereas, and I think at the media college there, it gave me everything I needed. Mm-hmm. There was always cameras on access, there were edit suites, and I had to use that to make films and get on and do with what I wanted to do. It could have been very easy just to sit back and do nothing.
Very valid point. A lot of people, you hear that if they've got there's a girl I was kicking around with for a while. She was a photographer, and she's saying that she didn't understand how no one's going to the and renting the cameras or using the studio. It's free.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. You're paying for it in terms of your course fees, but I think you're right. I think if you're going to a school like that and you've got that access to that sort of stuff, you should go and use it.
I was making films all the time, not just and it wasn't just something for my course.
It was for you.
It was for me or for friends or
Absolutely. No, I think you worked hard, mate, and there's testament to it.
But now I think if it was like, oh, it's $9,000 a year, I'd think, well, I could pretty much buy a whole package to make a film for $9,000.
Yeah,
and it's tough.
It is very tough weighing it out. I think it depends a lot on personality traits. I think if you're willing to kind of go and almost like break down those doors and constantly keep, which is a grind, mate. I mean, I've tried doing it.
Yeah, it's connections. You need connections.
You need the connections. You need the teams. And that leads me on. I know a fair few people are going to be, anticipating of this question, because the guys at Droplet who partnered with me to put this podcast out, the audio version, are very much into Marvel, very much into Star Wars. And when I kind of said you were coming on, they were very much excited. So I mean, we've talked a little. We may jump back and we may even do another one. But you've that kind of background, if you like. Really, with your hard work and your networking after, now you got credits like Avengers, Force Awakens, Solo, Rogue One, Mission Impossible 5, The Mummy, just to name a few, without kind of completely name dropping it all. I know people are going to be really kind of like interested in those titles, and I'm sure me and you can talk forever about those experiences. But I'd say, without obviously breaking any confidentiality or whatever else that you've got from those films, if you've got any stories you can share from any of those kind of titles in terms of your work on them.
Well, I think, just to go back slightly there, it's interesting the way you segued into it, because it was definitely connections that kind of slowly got me into that. Like, I came out of film school, I did a couple of TV dramas, and then I got a film called Salmon Fishing in the Yemen with a sound mixer called Peter Lindsay, and who I then worked with a lot over the course of my career in the UK. And then because I worked with him and because I got to work on such high-profile films like Age of Ultron, it also kind of got my name circling around in the wider circle. And so all of a sudden, there's other options becoming available to me that I could get on, the Star Wars films and Mission Impossible and things like that. I don't think there's much non-disclosure agreement left, because the films are out.
Sure.
There always is one when I'm filming it. And, I think it's important to keep the secret of the film that you're working on for the viewer. Nobody wants to, spoil while I might be looking for an answer, I don't want to find it. I don't want to find, and like The Force Awakens was quite interesting. It was very hard to get hold of the script, most often or not, every morning I'd get handed what they call sides, which is a small A5 document. It has the call sheet on the front, which basically tells you everything that's going on, who everyone is, what we're going to shoot, where we're going to shoot, everything you need to know. And beneath that is the script pages for the day.
Got you.
So it's very easy for me to flick through. Now, we're in the sound department, so we would get more access to it than others. But even then, sometimes there would be lines missing. The big juicy numbers wouldn't be in the script. I remember the script for Solo. They gave it to me on a reader. It was a big, kind of like a big ass Kindle.
Got you.
That was password protected, and it was assigned to me, and everything on there belonged to me, and it's watermarked with my name, even on the reader. So I got to read it, and then I got to the end of the script, and the last 3 pages were just completely redacted. I couldn't see anything.
Okay, we're keeping this secret. Yeah.
So I went up to a friend of mine who on the show who had, because of their job, had more access to the script. So they showed me the pages that were redacted, and even on the redacted pages, it says, I think it says something along the lines of, and then up on the chat, on the screen in front of him, turns a Star Wars character that's so juicy we're not going to put it on paper. And you think, so I'm not even finding anything out there. I think, spoiler alert for people who haven't seen it yet, I think it's Darth Maul that turned up. But I loved that wasn't there. I tried to convince everyone on set that it was going to be Jar Jar Binks on the screen.
Brilliant.
I don't think anyone believed me.
Brilliant. I love it.
But that happened a lot. There were a lot of little secrets and little things that happened all the time. Like I remember there was a day Daniel Craig played a stormtrooper.
Okay.
It was really fun. And we're the same age, so I loved this. This amazed me. There was a guy who I now know called David, who was one of the puppeteers for BB-8, the robot. And I don't know how I found this out, but he was Otis the Aardvark from CBBC.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. And then as I kind of, uncovered this, and it made, actually, once I figured it all out, it made so much sense. I started finding out, and he goes, well, yeah, I was Otis the Aardvark, but those two were the leprechauns on Live and Kicking. Because obviously, they're all puppeteers, and what a puppeteer is going to do?
Going to be
they're going to keep doing more puppetry. So I was like, there was my whole childhood was in front of me on this film set.
Brilliant.
I couldn't believe it. And that was one of the best things about certainly The Force Awakens, was that money was spent in camera, It was shot on film, and I'd done other feature films on real film. But there was something about The Force Awakens that I remember. There was a shot with Adam Driver walking through the snowy forest with his lightsaber, and we had this big Technicrane shot coming down behind him, and I was kind of, coming alongside the camera and bringing the boom in as I could, and the DP was there with his light meter, which you don't see that much anymore, next to the camera, and a little bounce board. And I could, as the camera came past me, I could hear the film going through the gate, and I thought, this is exactly how I imagined movie making to be when we were kids, like when we were thinking about it,
Absolutely.
Like these were the Spielberg kind of style movies that you're like, and I'd been on loads of films, and it had started to wash over me. I never was kind of quite in awe until that moment. I was like, my word.
I'm actually doing this.
This
is a.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a JJ sort of approach to that film, or would you say that's an
I
approach
think so.
he takes?
I think that's an approach he takes. He seems to be very much of the school of Spielberg. He's very inclusive for the group, and that was a long shot, and I remember we clapped the grips at the end of it, because it was a great crane shot, and they very much want, they help you, they make you feel part of the family so that you keep the secret and everyone works together. Great atmosphere, probably one of the best sets I've worked on in terms of, seeing money being spent in the right places. I was only there for maybe a couple of months. I was covering a friend who who had taken time off to have a child, which is great, very
Absolutely.
important. I took time off of Avengers: Age of Ultron to go on holiday with my mum.
Absolutely.
And I remember everyone going, "Where are you going?" I was like, I'm going on holiday. And they're like, "You can't go on holiday. Who are you going on holiday with?" And I went, "My mum." And everyone kind of goes, "Oh, I should maybe call my mum."
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it was. I was going to bring it up. That's a very actual. We'll hold it for a second, but I want to come back to that. The workload and the work-life balance. Absolutely. I mean, so that. I think it's interesting as well. You're saying that with the to actually have someone with a light meter. Do you think that? To me, it seems like digital's great, and obviously we're putting, I suppose, more pressure on the. I know we're talking about cameras now. We're putting a lot of pressure on that cameraman to do all that work, whereas before he'd have someone looking at that for him, director of photography going, "Whoa, these are going a bit weird. We need to go back." Do you think that's come onto you as part of your job? Like, obviously you're arming the boom, but are you also having to kind of like pay attention to leveling, or is there someone else who's kind of behind you, almost dealing with that side of it?
So I think this gets into your question about how the sound department's set up on a film set. So we tend to be a crew of 3, maybe 4. Historically, it was just a crew of 2. You had the sound mixer and the boom operator. And the sound mixer was the head of department, and they're in charge of, recording, setting the levels. They provide a mix of all the tracks. Back in the day, obviously, that was only a boom or 2, whereas now could be 8 tracks, maybe more, a couple of booms. Everyone's now wearing a radio mic. And also their mix, while they do it, it's not becoming so important because it's so easy now, as you know, to just dump everything into Pro Tools and you have all the tracks and you can just take what you want. Whereas historically, they just had the mix, and if the mix was bad, you would have to go again.
Yeah,
basically, they'd say, "Let's go again."
ADR and back to it.
Yeah, or ADR, which for those people who don't know, is basically you can replace the dialogue at a later date. With technology, it's getting a lot easier to do. I think it's a great tool, but it's quite often relayed back to us, when maybe I'm getting in people's way or something like that. They go, "Well, what about ADR?" Well, for me, the whole point of us being there on a set is to capture the performance of the actor.
Absolutely.
And the story. And I think by not capturing the dialogue there and then we're doing a disservice to that performance. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some actors, and there are plenty of occasions where you might want to replace it to change the performance or adjust it or have another go at it. It's a great tool, but our job is there to capture the performance. And so I think one of your questions kind of covers this. It's about, like, we're there mostly to get the dialogue and to get the dialogue as clean as possible. So, for anyone watching now, like, just pause the podcast for a minute, have a listen to what's going on around you. You can probably hear traffic outside, like my building now. I have an AC unit running. The world is noisy. And when you just put it down to one microphone that can't have the selection like our ears can, it's very noisy. So we have to do our best to limit that. And one of the sound mixer's responsibilities is in pre-production to, make sure these things are dealt with, that we don't turn up on a set that's too noisy, or, there's equipment that's too noisy, or the way the set's constructed causes an issue. All these things. And then when we're there, we've got to, we're laying down carpet, we're trying to dampen the acoustics, we're trying to remove footsteps, because in the edit, you don't want mismatched footsteps.
No.
They can add those back later. So we're just trying to capture the dialogue as clean as possible. And getting it on the boom is our dream, because, as you can imagine, like the microphone there in front of your face is going to sound way better than something that's
absolutely
tiny. And also, there's a sense of perspective to it. It sounds the way it should sound. Anything that's on the chest, whilst they've got better and better as time has gone on, they don't quite match the shot.
Well, you don't get the space, do you? You don't get the room, And I suppose in the same way that really, if as you've highlighted, if an actor is performing a part, they are also performing it in a room. Now, obviously, I know a soundstage I've been in some, we've been in loads, they're dead, which is great, because then you can really kind of get in there and really gain those mics, because you've got that opportunity. I think it's kind of, one of the questions I was kind of talking about was the radio mic thing, and kind of, I always think this, because the ADR thing, I can actually see it. It doesn't. Not all the time, but sometimes I'm watching a film and I'm like, he didn't say that, or she didn't say that.
Especially like I just, with the lockdown, we've been rewatching things. I just, with the wife, she'd never seen Band of Brothers, so we watched it. And there's so many lines that have been inserted in there, and they're not a replacement. They've just been put in to add to the story, which is fantastic that you can do that. But to me, it sticks out.
That's right.
When James Bond is stood up against a wall with gunfire and bolts and everything, and you can hear his line clear as day.
Yeah.
It's ADR. But, we're getting better at it. We're certainly getting better at trying to deaden down those situations. But to me, it sticks out.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. It takes me out of the film. And I suppose that's where a combination maybe of a radio and a boom, I suppose, could then... perhaps help to add the clarity.
So radio mics have kind of become the norm too, because now we don't just shoot with one camera, we shoot with 2, maybe 3. There were times on the Avengers where we were shooting 4, because we actually only had maybe 2 weeks of all the cast. And so they want to put 4 cameras on it and cover it, because we haven't got time. This is very, in a 6-month schedule of a film, we've only got 2 weeks where you have all the Avengers. So you have to,
get on with it. Yeah, literally.
And so that's why you need, and the radio mics are a great tool for that, and they sound better. They don't always work, because they're at the mercy of whatever costume they're wearing. Now there's a lot of collaboration you can do with costume, and they can choose the right fabrics to make your life easier, and the different techniques that you can use to mount the mic in there. If it's even in the costume, sometimes we put it in the hair, sometimes it's in a hat. There's all kinds of things we can do
with it. I remember that ages ago. I remember it was like, what are you working on, Mike? And you're like, I can't tell you anything. I'm not talking about it. I'm working on Avengers. And it's like, okay, well, what have you been up to? Trying to mic up Scarlett Johansson's suit. It's a nightmare. And I think then it was like the conversation very quickly stopped after that, and we just went back to the bar. But it's like,
So I remember, and it's a funny story, because the mixer I was working for, Peter, he lives in Northern Ireland, so he said, "Hey, can you go into Shepperton and speak to the costume, the people that were making the super suit team, about where we can put the radio mic transmitter?" So I went in there, and they were great, they were fantastic, and they said, "We're thinking of the tool belt and how big's the pack?" So I left them with the pack, and we started coming up with all these plans of how it would fit in and where the cable would, and we'd extend the antenna, make everything work fantastic. Now, I think this was probably 6 or 7 weeks before we started shooting Avengers. 4 weeks before we started shooting Avengers, it was announced that Scarlett Johansson was about 3 months pregnant. And basically, she was stood there in her suit, 3, 4, 5 months pregnant while we were shooting. And I was like, didn't matter anyway. We could have just put it on, because they could only really cover in a close-up, and anything else wide, if it was her, was either a body double or VFX or somewhere between the two. Or I think they also did some additional photography after she'd had the baby. But yeah, that's certainly on the bigger films, that's a lot of work that needs to happen before you arrive on the set. Like last year I was on The Boys, the Amazon Prime show, and that's again a lot of super suits. Lucky it was season 2. So
that's funny, man. That show.
It's a great show.
It absolutely. I wasn't ready for it. Like I kind of just put it on, and I was like, "Wow, this is funny." Like it hits the nail on the head. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I was trying to explain it to someone who else we worked on it the other day, and I kind of think it's kind of like some of the best sci-fi shows, like Battlestar, where it's not so much about superheroes; it's the story around it, and that's bang on to society today, right? And that's what's so great about it.
Absolutely. It really kind of, because when I first put it on, I thought, oh, is this going to be another sort of, DC Marvel sort of TV show? And it absolutely wasn't that. Yeah, I think you're right.
No.
It definitely highlighted, it definitely brought society into it. I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. And it was well balanced, I think, in terms of like the superhero stuff and then the real stuff and then the comedy. And the characters were brilliant. So yeah, that was a cool show. But sorry, I've interrupted you there, man. You were telling me about
That's okay.
sound.
I had a lot of fun on that show. I was unfortunately my back had got injured, which is not great for a boom operator. So I was on The Boys as a sound utility, which is the third member in the crew. But on The Boys, because it's superheroes, the utility who deals with a lot of the radio miking, certainly in Canada, has a lot more responsibility. So I took that show. Unfortunately, I got sick on the show and I had to have time off. I ended up in hospital. There were a few things, but I did love that show. I thought it was great. And I was very fortunate that that was the show I took because of all the situations that I had going on. But yeah, I hope season 2 comes out this summer, but I'm slightly wary that Amazon might be slowly dragging out their releases as we're not making TV shows.
Yeah.
They're going to drag them out a bit.
I think you're right. I mean, that's one of the questions I had at the end was what we'll cover that towards the end about, obviously COVID and what we're going to do with regards to the industry.
Yeah.
I suppose, we spoke a bit about the whole, the sound team structure on set. Obviously that was very much from like a, I suppose from a full production, full budget point of view.
Yes.
I would imagine there's definitely a difference between TV and film, or is that something that those gaps sort of merge now?
I think there might have been once upon a time. I think it is blurred because now TV and film are kind of blurred. Like I say, I work in TV, but I don't make many shows that go on TV anymore. They're Amazon or Netflix, and
which are films.
Quite often they're with the same budget. You know. So we do the same. I mean, I think Star Wars, we were like 4, maybe. But TV is mostly three-person team. So the sound mixer, as I said before, who's, the big cheese and is responsible for everything that goes on in pre-production and what happens on the set. They're in charge. They record and mix. The buck stops with them. The boom operator, which is what I primarily do now, runs the floor for the sound mixer, is responsible for the microphone placement on the set. And, because the sound mixer can't be on the set with their gear. They have a big cart. They normally sit just off the side of the set. So the boom op is there working with the camera operators and the first assistant director who runs the floor and doing that. And then on top of that, you have the utility or assistant who fills the gaps, comes in, does the second boom if the 2 booms are required, which is becoming more the case as we cross-shoot with 2 cameras. They hand out the headphones, they do all the cabling that's required, although there's less and less cabling required as we go on. And they help with the boom operator, laying carpet, we're trying to reduce the other sounds on set.
Perfect. So yeah, I think it's definitely one thing I was going to ask you about is the whole process of kind of bringing this all in together. Because another thing I found during my kind of new approach to using cameras is audio drift.
Yeah.
Which drives me nuts because I don't actually understand. I don't get it. It's like I've got a camera here, I'm recording separately, but then things are starting to go out of sync over time. And I'm thinking, well, why? What, I don't get it. It's not. I'm not recording any audio on the camera. So I've made sure I've set the kind of sample rates the same. So this is like a personal question, I suppose.
So my understanding of it's slightly limited, but like time code isn't actually true synchronization because whilst it kind of points you in the right ballpark of where sync is. I think what your issue is there is sample rate. So I have my recorder going for you here. It's recording at 48K. So that's 48,000 samples, right?
Yep.
Second. So if you have 2 recorders that aren't sampling at the same time,
you're going to get the problem. Yeah.
Then you're going to get issues.
I suppose
and obviously, as you have less professional equipment, those those, because they're the things that cost money, right? Like if you look at the difference between like an Arri Alexa and the webcam you've got, there's things in sync and ins and outs and accessibility and all of that. There's big differences. That's where the money goes.
Absolutely, that's the thing. Yeah, I think it definitely. I mean, obviously, me and you we confirmed that before the session, right? We're going 24/48, cool. So both our sessions are synced to that when I do the mix. But it's definitely weird with the camera, where so I still set the kind of 48 on the camera, but I'm not actually using any audio on the camera. But I think it could just be that, just cheaper cameras, that don't perhaps do that. And I know that there's like in the film world, you guys are almost timecode synced. So I gather that there's something that imprints on the actual file
so it goes in what we call metadata, which I'm sure you'll find the same as in any file has metadata, and it's not quite stamped across the file. It's at the file in the metadata, it says this file starts at samples since midnight,
right?
And then from there, whatever you put that file into, it can work out the samples and the time code and everything like that. So it figures it out. But
so when it when it gets to your Avid, it's kind of
yeah. But like I say, we don't really do it in drama. We just do timecode sync. We don't deal with sample syncing, and it's the same. Like how a TV has 2 frames going. Obviously, if you had 2 cameras and they weren't sample locked, you might find the 2 fields not matching. And if you wanted to cut live from one to the other, it wouldn't line up. But that doesn't really bother us with what we do, because we don't work in real time, if you know what I mean.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just a niggling question. I thought, this is something I'm going to ask Mike live on the podcast.
but in reality, I'm actually pretty useless at it. And one of the best things about my job is it's more of a personable skill, like it's people skills, right? The tech aspect of my job is only a third of it, probably. And we're only recording max, say, 10 tracks, right, on a day. Occasional days might call for more, but sometimes we might only be recording 4. If you compare that to live sound or a studio recording or something, it's nothing, right? But some of the hardest days are trying to get one radio mic on one big actor, right? Whereas I can go do a corporate or a smaller show and I can put 10 radio mics on 10 people in the same time it took me to negotiate one radio mic on one actor. So
it's balancing the ego faders, Mike. I love that, and I can't remember who first said that, mate, but I love that analogy.
It's a game.
But I suppose that is. I mean, I suppose that you are having to kind of. I suppose as well. One thing I like about film is the whole team of it. That everyone's job is integral to make that picture. So you're going to be coming at it from you're managing the floor. You're going to be coming at it from I need to get the best sound possible from you.
Yes.
So it's like, and then I suppose it's kind of you've got to. Surely people are going to understand that's what you're doing, but I still think it's how you can't just grab someone and start sort of taping a you've got to hello mate, how we doing?
Yeah, there's protocols and way to go about it and way to make your life easier. And actually, the prime example is of a good way to describe it is you're from a music background and I work in the film industry. Now, where's my microphone? You can't see it. I've hidden it out of shot. It's just above me here. Whereas yours is right in front of your face,
Yeah,
because it sounds better. But I'm used to compromise. Like I can never have. I don't work in radio. I can't have the mic exactly where it would sound perfect.
The best. Yeah.
So I always have to compromise that. But I consider myself as a filmmaker first and as a sound engineer second. So I understand. There's a story to be told, and how do we go about it? So we're never quite at the forefront of everyone's minds when we're on a film set. Sometimes you do films where that's more the case. If it's a musical number. I just lost you on our little video chat
that's
there.
That's my phone being... Let's just call you back there. Slight technical glitch.
Sorry, everyone. We have I think we're connected about 3 different ways, and then also recording separately.
Absolutely.
Just so we. Oh, hold on, I haven't.
No worries, mate. It's fine. Do you know what that is? That's my iPhone telling me that I've been spending too long on Facebook.
Oh, you have that?
I have that turned on, mate. Yeah.
That's great.
So we've got a bit of a, Mike. But by the way, the actual camera that's going out on the podcast isn't what you're seeing, dude. It's
I know, I saw that. So you have a camera off to the side recording.
Yeah.
This is just.
But the good thing with us guys, though, the film composers, and it's definitely a thing, is it's almost like the tech. And whenever you see a composer on a YouTube video, they've all got their cameras slightly to the side because we want everyone to see our screens and we want everyone to see our mics. And the film composer isn't really a rock star or like it really is like in a dark room. I think we're coming out the woodwork slightly with the sort of live shows and things like that, but every guy I see online is like he's got his side set up with everything there. This isn't connecting, is it? It's very strange. Why isn't it connecting to you?
Hold on a second. I nearly hung up on Skype.
Video connecting. We can always do the edits, Mike. It's fine. I can edit this back together. Okay, guys, we're back. Apologies about that slight technical glitch. Where were we, Mike? We were talking about. Where were we?
Where were we?
It's completely. I completely lost. That's what we were talking about. We were saying about the you see in the film like you see yourself as a storyteller, like a filmmaker, over a musician, which I think's amazing, and that you see that, because that is really what you are. You are a filmmaker, man. Like everything you do is going into the quality of that product. And I do like that analogy of the whole there's me with my mic in front of me kind of thing, and I probably could put it above me, to be fair. But I just get I get the clearest sound, mate. And it looks cool.
I know it doesn't matter for you. Like, I'm just used to, like, when I do an interview or something, I have it above me here, and that's what I'm used to. It's very rare, if ever, that I've put it above myself.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Sounds great. So that's the important thing. I'm listening to it. If anyone's wondered why I keep looking this way, I have my recorder here and I'm recording the conversations to you so we can get better audio than what Skype can provide.
Absolutely, yeah. Me too. I keep glancing over there. Is it still recording? Paranoid. But, I mean, so I suppose you do have to take that into consideration. I've often thought that, and there's a few times when I was with my literally 2 seconds experience of working as a boom operator, where I was kind of like, how am I going to get this without being in the shot? And then you slowly start to learn kind of where the camera is and how close you can get and things like that. I suppose my question really is like, well, I suppose there's 2 sides to the question. Firstly, is kind of like, is that something you do in before the set? You look at how it's going to move. Do you have like an idea of how the camera's going to move?
We not so much in pre-production, but on the day, we might rehearse a shot, or I'd figure it out with the camera operator what the shot's going to be. It's very much a collaborative process. And actually, like when we talked about the projects you were helping out on, and when I think back to when I was on projects like that, they're some of the hardest things to boom, because you have someone who's operating a camera that isn't really a camera operator, isn't experienced, doesn't know how to deal with a boom operator. And then you have a boom operator who isn't a boom operator, and you have actors that might not have dealt with the whole wider film crew that much, and a director who's never directed before. So the bigger the show, often the easier it can be to get on with the job, because everyone is in their right position and they know what they're doing and they know who is responsible. One of the hardest things that can be for me is if the cinematographer is operating the camera, because they're dealing with the lighting and working with the director and all of that. But if there's someone whose job it is to operate, then part of their job is to work with the boom operator and other departments to figure out what everyone needs to make the shot, to
get the best. And I think that comes back again to what you said earlier about having a great team. If a team is everything, even if you hear people, even if they're like, silly example, but even people playing video games online, it's like, oh, no one's playing together is rubbish. It comes into everything on every level, I think, is the team. I mean, that being said, do you think, what would you say has been probably the most challenging? It doesn't necessarily have to be on a specific project, but something that's sort of been like a big challenge for you? Like, I mean, for me, I'd be paranoid that I didn't record a scene, or like, like
yeah. I keep looking here to check I'm recording.
yeah, exactly.
Freaks me out.
It's a fear, mate. It's a fear,
Yeah.
or things like that. Like, or you got the boom in the shot, and you're like, oh no, like, what do you think's been sort of the most like challenging, I suppose, in that way?
I think one of the most challenging films I did, and whilst I wasn't responsible for the bigger aspects of it, but it did mean I had a lot of work to do, was I did a film called Florence Foster Jenkins, which was a film by Stephen Frears where Meryl Streep plays a real singer in I think the early 1900s who couldn't actually sing.
Right.
She had a lot of money and she loved to sing, but she couldn't sing, and she became a bit of a star. And Meryl Streep performed it incredibly well, and the way to capture it was we recorded it live. So all the singing was recorded live, and not only that, she was accompanied by a piano player who was also an actor, which was also recorded live.
Right.
So that just meant that, as I joked about earlier, where I only have 3 or 4 mics to deal with, and maybe a few headphones for people, and a couple of booms, all of a sudden this became a bigger task. It was all of a sudden more like a big TV show rather than a film. So we had a music department who would look after the recording of the piano and any playback requirements, anything like that. The piano, which is really smart, the piano was, they had real pianos that were converted so that you could dampen the keys, but it would record the keys in MIDI.
Okay.
So it'd be there playing a real piano, but it'd pretty much just be dull thuds.
Okay.
Which meant that, as I've alluded to earlier, we want to record the dialogue as clean as possible. So it's about removing everything else in the room. Now it's hard, as you probably know, to try and balance a piano and a singer in the same room.
Absolutely.
Eliminate the piano, record the singer, and then they went back and
MIDI'd it.
They could, with the MIDI, they could adjust it. They could slip all those wrong keys could be slipped back into place. And then what they did is there's pianos that can play MIDI files. So they then put a piano in a recording studio, put some beautiful mics over it, and replayed and recorded it back. And that's what you hear in the movie.
Amazing.
Which was really smart. But it was just, for me, that was like, I had a lot going on. I had hidden earpieces, sometimes up to 30 of them in the orchestra. And, there was different headphone feeds, IMs being fed different ways. It was very much more like a concert for a band or something. So that made that film particularly challenging. Luckily, I was kind of the person who got everything done rather than the person that was responsible
for the actual end result. I can see that, because it's like you go in. I gather you go into it and then you look at it and you think, oh, actually, hang about. Yeah, this is gonna. It's not that you. It's you could definitely do it, but I suppose it's like you when you actually got into the room, it's like, yeah, this is going to require a lot of mental, where's the coffee shop sort of thing. Like, it's, I get that. So I think that's the same for most things. You end up on a session somewhere and you think, this is going to be interesting. But I suppose that's part of the fun for us guys who like to sort of torture ourselves with strange, like, creative tasks and how can we record this mental scene kind of thing in the best way possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. I think, and that's interesting to see. Obviously, then you got to work with the sound department and music department coming in looking after that. And I hadn't thought, because I've often thought about kind of recording guitars with amp modulation on the software. So you've got the clean tracks and then re-amping them in a studio through a cab and recording that. Right. And that's kind of what they did with the piano. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's smart. And that's actually what we, in a recording studio, music recording studio, certainly historically, you might do things a bit different. Like if it was, you would run certain instruments through a compressor before it even got to whatever you were recording it on. Whereas our goal is pretty much to record everything as clean as possible.
Yeah.
So that it can then be, because it's so easy to be dealt with in post. Like I said to you, like I have an AC unit here that's a bit noisy. And if you want to, you might clean it up a little bit. Now, it's very easy for you to do that. in post. So we try and record everything as clean as we can, tend not to run it through a compressor or anything like that. The only thing we do have, which is probably slightly different to the music world, is we have limiters on our inputs. So, you know, where I'm talking to you now, I can't peak it out. You know, the limiter will kick in, and you know, the day is saved. But technology is improving with that, you know, all the time. So I think that's the only different aspect.
I think that's. I mean, I've had it myself a couple of times. Like I've got no limiter on this now. You know, I just try and modulate. I've got input monitoring as well, so I can. I try and, you know, modulate my voice, if you like, and move back. But I think it's definitely. I mean, there's what you can't really do it because I've known guys who try to record. They're trying to record vocals and they're trying to get like the singer to hear this amazing sound in their cans. You know, so they've got all these kind of really high end CPU plug-in reverbs. You know, and I'm on a session going, you realise that's going to put latency into the recording, and it's not. You need to route that through hardware if you want to do that, and preferably through the desk that it's not actually being recorded.
Yes.
You know, just do it so she can hear it and leave it at that. And I think it's a tech's definitely getting better, but I think if you don't fully understand, technically there's nothing wrong with what that guy was doing. She was singing better when she could hear that produced sound. It gave her the confidence, I gather, that this was going to be sort of nearly final. But because and there's nothing wrong with what he did, but he didn't understand that we're trying to record with the lowest latency and the lowest, and you're causing problems in Pro Tools.
I think this came up in one of the other podcasts, actually. It's very easy to get hung up on tech, especially because we've all fallen into this because we're a little bit nerdy, right?
Absolutely.
And it's very easy to get hung up on it, but you've got to remember what's important. And the important thing is capturing the performance, whether it's a singer or a violinist or an actor. You know, it's important to get that. And how do we best achieve that? Now, if giving them a sense of reverb in their headphones helps you achieve that, then do it. But you need to go about it in a way that's not detrimental to the original performance you're capturing, right?
Absolutely.
And like you say, so split the signal, run that separate through, so that's, you know, the way to go about it.
She's not interfering with your tape. Absolutely, definitely. I mean, leading us on to the next question here, Mike, is and I like the way I've phrased this, given you saying that we're all a bit of nerds. Yeah, because it actually says one of my favourite personal topics, gear.
Yeah, I know, right? So since I moved to Canada, I've mostly been working as a boom operator, which was the same in the UK too. But I also worked as a sound recordist who, you know, went out and did documentaries and corporates as on my own with my mixer recorder and the boom in my own hand, you know, on my own. So I still have some of that gear around. I was thinking about going, well, I'll get the booms out to show, and then I just thought, why would anyone want to see a long black stick? It's like this. There's nothing exciting about it. But I have 3 boom poles of different lengths, and you know, small, medium, and large. And I try not to use the large unless I need it because there's weight there. And for me, booming is a long game, not only on the day but for my career. So I don't like to have anything heavier than I need. My boom poles are made by Ambient and Panamic, if anyone's interested. They're 2 of the bigger, you know, manufacturers. It's a very niche market. You've obviously come across probably the other ones, the lower end of the market, which are heavier and harder, you know.
Heavier, harder, and I do. I mean, mine's by Stag, which is a really low end. And I found that even it's got enough kind of padding around it to a point, but if you move slightly or you try to extend it, forget it. It's going to pick it up. Yeah.
So some of them are better for that. I mostly don't. I would never normally try and adjust the length in the middle of a shot. Although there are times, especially if my boom's not playing at the time, maybe it's another mic, I might make the adjustment to make the next shot. But it's all about trying to find the right length, find your right position, so that, you know, you can access every actor that you need to without causing shadows, right? That's the biggest issue.
Of course.
Everyone seems to be an expert on boom shadows and calling when the boom's in shot, which isn't always my fault. It's a collaboration, and you know, I could rehearse, and it's happened, man. Like there was there was a day on Solo, and I was on the Millennium Falcon. It was the newer set model of it for the movie, and I kept asking the operator. I said, am I safe here? Am I safe here? It's the whole thing's kind of kicking off. It's exploding. Stuff's flying around. So he goes, yeah, you're great there. So I stand there, and they start firing everything off. And the guy comes running through with a camera, and then he pans right to me, and there I am in shot. And they go, cut, right? And it was 15 minutes to reset all the explosives and all of that. And luckily, the guy went, that was my fault, because I had asked him several times.
Am I okay here? Yeah.
Am I good here? So, and I don't blame him either for feeling. Sometimes I try to predict, and as, I've been doing it for 10 years now, so I slowly understand what they're trying to do. And you can kind of predict what they're going to do, right? They always say for like the focus puller, like they always check the length to the door, because the operator is always going to go to the door. Like if someone walks in, right? Even if they say they're not going to do it.
They're going to do it. Yeah.
So there's all these things you can do to cover yourself. But you do get caught out sometimes. And sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's miscommunication. Sometimes they've decided to do different, forget to tell you. Sometimes you just get it wrong. I'm guessing all the time where the frame line is. Sometimes it takes me a couple of weeks if the operator does something slightly different. Like if you imagine like the show Mr. Robot, right? Quite often they're like this,
Yeah.
And me as a boom operator, I can't figure that out because, I don't know where to put it. Whereas I'm more used to this, right? I'm more, a more common frame.
That's right. Do you think it's like in my world, if I've ever worked with, say as an editor who's picked up like one of my scores and he likes it, and he's like, and this is why I think in the trailer world, they don't like the composers getting in with the editors, because then you can build a working rapport, and
right.
you cut at them out basically.
Yeah.
So do you find that if you've worked with the same kind of camera crew, if you like, there's almost like nuances in their movements and their approach that you then could interpret better if you've worked with the same team? Yeah,
you might know what a camera operator is more likely to do if you worked with them before. And then not only that, their strengths, their weaknesses, as much as they know my strengths and weaknesses, right? They probably know that around about 4:00 after lunch, I switch off,
Don't talk to Mike about anything.
Don't expect him to keep the boom out of shot after lunch. So I think that is the case. I think and not only that, there's an element of trust too, right? It's like if you're an operator, it's probably a scary thing that if there's a boom operator, and I certainly found that when I first arrived in Canada, because nobody knows who I am. Especially if you're running around with a really heavy Steadicam, the last thing you want is, someone getting in the way with the boom, right? And ruining the take that, you put a lot of energy into. But the beautiful thing about a take is that it's there, we do it, and in the hope that everyone gets everything right? So sound, camera, actors, costume, lighting,
it's there.
The grips, like everyone has to get it right on that day. And if we get it all right, great. Yes, sometimes maybe sound doesn't get it right, but they love the take. So we're going to deal with it. We'll either steal the line from a previous take or ADR or whatever, or, technology's changing. Maybe camera, maybe the exposure wasn't quite right, but it's very easy to.
So I suppose in a way, what I'm getting is very much patience, and I do want to come back to this work-life balance, but not quite yet in terms of the times you're on the set. But I think, like, has there been times where you've had to kind of say, cut? Or would that be more the mixer who would give that direction to say that the sound was crap?
It depends. I mean, that's a relationship you have to build up with a director and the first assistant director who runs the set, and the mixer and everyone else involved, because some people don't want you to call cut. You don't know what the director's looking for is the important thing. So certainly in the early days, you see some people kind of getting worked up about an aspect, of a shot, when the director only cares about the opening, shot, or all they care about is actually in the last 3 takes they got it great. It's just that they didn't get them walking out the door well.
Sure.
So you yell cut on take 4 because there's a plane.
Yeah, when
it doesn't
actually
help.
when actually his intention wasn't. Yeah, I understand.
No,
that.
I've definitely called cut when there's a technical, when we're not rolling sound, when there's an issue like that. That's a no-brainer. The other stuff I've done, but that's a relationship you have to build up with the director, whether they're going to let you do it, or,
Okay,
trust you to do it.
it makes
Sometimes that's a great way to, upset everyone involved.
Well, I suppose, but it's one of those things, isn't it? I suppose it's a difficult call because you can't wing it if you're not recording, mate, or you're not if you
Yeah,
I
think that's a different game, and bad things happen all the time. Especially as if you think about the amount of hours I've spent on a film set, that used to bother me a lot in the early days, making mistakes and things like that. But I do it so often, right? Like I'm doing it all the time that yes, I'm going to get it wrong someday, or something's not going to go the way we want it to go. We do our best to, like I had the gear last night set up to record this, make sure it all works, check it again this morning. I keep looking now. There's so many things you can do, but stuff still happens.
That's right. That's right. So, I think, and like you said, like for instance, with the example with Solo, that absolutely wasn't your fault, but because that guy said you'll be fine there, and perhaps he honestly thought maybe he was focused on something else and just hadn't made that.
Yeah, I think at the time he thought that I was fine there, but then obviously, as an actor does something, he decides he wants to go there.
Yeah. It's so much to play, and I think what's coming through constantly, which my big take home so far is. It is the collaboration and just people got to own up. Like I love the fact that
and communication, right?
Absolutely,
Don't be afraid to put your hand up and say I made a mistake, or I need some more help here, or that didn't work for me. This is what I need. What are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And
don't presume what everyone else is trying to get out of the situation.
That's right. I keep focused on that film, and I like the fact as well that was on me. That sort of thing's perfect. If someone tries to sort of say, Mike, what you doing? You're like, well, dude, I did say like 3 times, like, am I okay here? Then you get arguing, and I think
that doesn't happen. It's not needed. Like that. You just move on.
Yeah.
You can get on, and like I say, the bigger the show I'm on, the more professional people can be, and the easier things like that are.
Perfect.
But I am also aware, the bigger the film is, quite often the more sound can take a back seat. There are exceptions to that rule. But, there's only 3 or 4 sound people on a film set, and there could be hundreds of people dealing with the image.
Yeah.
Be it costumes, sets people, camera people.
Absolutely. It's a big old thing. I mean, so would you say that nowadays, I think one of the last times we hung out in the UK, in fact, I think this was quite a while ago. You were showing me like a new kind of like mixy like recorder you bought and things like that. Do you find that now? Do you find that generally when you're on those, like when you're on the boys, for instance, you're literally kind of turning up with your boom gear, and that's all you really need?
Yeah, my gear's kind of taken a back seat for now. This actually is the first time I've used this recorder since the end of 2017.
Wow.
I got to go do a documentary in Canada for Netflix for a few days. It's sat there, and it's actually been superseded since, but it still is a great recorder. It's a Sound Devices 633.
Sexy.
And we were talking about this earlier. I've never gone crazy on buying gear, because the gear, I'm, as much as this is a passion for me and I love doing what I do, it's to make money.
Of course.
Really. It's to try and support myself. So I won't buy gear unless it's going to make me money or get me work. So I won't go out and just buy everything just because I feel like that's what I want to get. And I feel like, if I've already got the tool to do the job. Now, there is a level of, you have to have something, right? Like I always, when I first started buying the gear, I was like, well, if you're a plumber, then you really should have a spanner. Like you can't say, yeah, I'll take the gig. You haven't got a spanner, have you?
Yeah.
So you have to have a bit of it, but don't go crazy. Just buy what you need. Make money on that. And if you find you need more, sometimes I rent gear in. I borrow it off friends, or, hey, have you got a mic that will suit me? Like, I have the same as you. I have a shotgun up above me. It's a MKH60. It's been superseded a few times. This mic's from the 90s, but it sounds great. But if I need something else, like a cardioid or a hyper, I want to buy one. Don't get me wrong. I'd love one, but I don't I don't take it out to work that much. So
it's not necessarily. I mean, one of my friends, he recently bought a Neumann, mate. $3,500, and I kind of thought, okay, that's cool, and he's got the nice case, and you can see it's a piece of art for him. But I'm thinking, you're not going to you might get a return on that in 10 years, but right now where you're at, you're not. It wasn't needed. You could have bought
and they aren't going to really pay any different to, if you just had something by Shure sitting on the side, right?
Exactly. I mean, Shure's a great mic, and even some of the Audio Technica stuff. Like some of those podcast mics they do. I mean, I talked yesterday. We were talking about the Shure SM7.
Yes.
And I know that's Michael Jackson's mic. He used that on the whole of Bad and whatever else, and I've used it. It's great. And you see all the podcasters with that specific mic, and I know why they're using that mic. It's because you can gain the hell out of it. It doesn't really tend to kind of. It needs to be close to your mouth, which again is good. Mm-hmm. But the Rode's running. I mean, I bought this 9 years ago. And it's fine, mate. It's all good.
It was like a couple £100 or something.
Yeah, it's 200 quid, I think.
Here's the thing: like if you all of a sudden get the opportunity to record an incredible musician, you can go rent the Neumann, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you, even if you just did it for yourself, even if you just went, this is a great opportunity, I want to listen to something real nice. You can just go off, rent it, see if you like it, play around with it, and then, even compare it to the other mics you have, and then send it back the next day, right?
It's like, that was done. I've got the recording. Wicked.
Right? Yeah, so... you still got the cash in the bank. And I think and this is a particularly important point of conversation now, while we're during lockdown, and you were talking about the work, you kept referring to this work-life balance, which we haven't really discussed yet. But when I'm working, especially in Canada, the hours are incredibly longer. I'm here, back in the UK, I think I was working maybe 55-hour weeks, whereas here, it's at least 65.
Wow.
So it's not uncommon to do a 14-hour work day. So that doesn't include your hour lunch or, turning up and setting up, getting to work and wrapping up and leaving, all of that. So they could be incredibly long days. But I keep my life as, I enjoy myself and I have nice things, but I also don't go crazy because those long days obviously result in big paychecks. But my income kind of goes like this.
Of course.
And I try to live, bang in the middle.
Yeah, which is smart.
Now, with what's going on with the lockdown and this, I'm probably now at the longest time I've ever not worked since I started in the film industry, a couple of months off. I'm okay. It's fine. Like I've always prepared to not be working for a little bit, and I'm enjoying life, because when you're working 14-hour days, there is no life apart from on a film set. And don't get me wrong, we all love anyone who's on a film set for any length of time wants to be there. It's like the circus, and we've all run away, and we want to be there, and we love it. But life can go by.
Absolutely, 14-hour days, and I suppose that really is. I suppose in some ways that is why maybe getting into a team and sort of sticking with that team, at least for, say, I know people have spoken about, say, the Nolan Batman trilogies obviously ran for 10 years.
Yeah.
In terms of longevity of the production, obviously there's a real family there, and there's probably been some lifelong friends made through those.
Totally. And you find them on other films too, right? Like you might come across the camera crew on a different job with other new people, or things like that. There's that's one of the best things about our job is you work together intensely with someone for a few months and then you go off. And I like this balance. I wouldn't like to work 9 to 5 every day, every weekday for the rest of my life. I like not working for a couple of weeks, or, this winter I took a couple of days off of my job to go snowboarding, like I try to enjoy my life too. Because I think that's important for your work as well. I think if you don't enjoy yourself and have a life, then that can affect your final product in what you do with working.
I think I agree, and I think so. From what I'm getting, is it will be almost like, intense for weeks and weeks, maybe even 2-3 months. But then you're like, I'm off for a month. So it's, you try, you know, and I gather during that time, I mean, would you say you're obviously it's probably going to change and switch depending on where you are, but you know, would you say it's literally 14-hour day, come home, chill for 1 hour, go to bed, get up, and is it just literally just grind for that time?
I think when I was younger and when I first started out, I would come home, try and enjoy myself, have a couple of beers, do whatever. And I didn't sleep that well, and it became a recurring cycle of, you know, slog. Whereas now I just accept it for what it is, come home, unwind for a little bit, go to bed. In the most part, I just, because you know, sometimes I'm coming home at like 2, 3 in the morning. And because we work such long days, as the week goes on, you know, I could be starting at 5 p.m. on a Friday, having started at 7 a.m. on the Monday. So I tend to just go home and sleep. And when I wake up, whatever time I have spare, I use that to enjoy or go to the gym or, you know, do any of these things to look after myself.
Sure.
But yeah, I wait for the downtime. So, you know, right now I'm trying my best to enjoy myself.
Trying to use the time well, mate. Well,
yeah.
I think that's kind of, I think for me it's been difficult at times because obviously I've still had to keep some sort of day job. And while I've managed to find a way that I can negotiate the hours. So if I get busy here, I can go right. And then if I don't, I can go like that. That's starting to level with royalties and things. Like I'm starting to, stuff I've done years ago is sort of paying now. So I can take some of those, even if it's a YouTube video and there's some ad rev or whatever. You know, and whatever else. But there's definitely been times where I'm like, what am I doing? You know, it's like I've just done whatever work hours, you know, a day job essentially. And now I'm doing this on top of that. And that's been hard for me to manage. I end up just not speaking to, like we said, I better call my mum kind of thing. It has been like that at times where I realise I haven't actually spoken to anyone for months, you know, but I think it's just, I think as you highlighted it, I think it's just maturity. As you get a little bit older, you start to realise, well, actually those 2 beers are going to mean I'm going to sleep like crap and I'm not going to wake up properly tomorrow. And actually let's use this time to give my mum a quick call. Do you know what I mean? It's just structuring your life better. I think you just, when you're younger, you think you're invincible, don't you? And you can get away with everything.
You don't realise the balance. You just putting everything in, doing everything you can do. Like I don't actually drink coffee anymore. Like I thought about giving up alcohol, you know, and I just couldn't see that happening. So I was like, well, how about coffee? And I gave up coffee, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Like once I got over the initial shock of it, and I find that some mornings I'm tired, some evenings I'm tired, some nights I sleep really well because I haven't had any coffee. Some days I don't, but I think on the whole it's probably an up. But you find those balances, I think, as you go through life and as you understand your job a bit more.
Definitely. No, I think you're right. I think coffee's coffee's become like how it's become such almost like a staple statement in the world, especially in the West. I don't know, but it's you know it's interesting, isn't it? How we all
wasn't really a thing when we were kids, right?
No, it was tea and
it was all Nescafe, and if you were lucky, it might be the Gold Blend.
Yeah, it's just someone spoiling you with that. Yeah, absolutely. It's strange how that's become a thing. I think it feeds into the whole mentality of work, which we all live in at the moment. That's what we're in, you know. I mean, just to bring it slightly back, would you just a few words, I suppose, on what do you think's been your favourite project? And that's probably going to be a really hard one to answer.
It is tough because there's for me there's 2 different categories for that question, and one is the best project to work on, and the other is what's the best project either in success or to watch back, you know. Avengers was a lot of fun. I don't know why, there was something about it. It was just very fun. We did lots of, you know, we spent a whole summer in Hendon shooting that Sokovia sequence. It was the old Metropolitan Police training ground. That was a lot of fun, you know, superheroes and explosions and, you know, all of that. But my most favorite film I've ever worked on, because 1, I think it's a lovely film, and 2, it just had a great story, real story, was a film called Philomena by Stephen Frears.
Yeah, great film.
Really nice, well written, had this incredible balance from Steve Coogan of humor and drama. True story, you know, I got to meet the real Philomena, which I thought was important, and it kind of gives a voice to this story, you know, that happened. So I think that's the one I'm probably most proud of and my favorite. But it, you know, depends on, I had a great time on The Boys, but I was also sick, so I couldn't enjoy all of it. And that actually gave me another kind of grounding where it's like, well, I'm not going to be, 100% all the time. It's not possible. And actually, that's when you were talking about, having the day job and the passion job, which we both have. And I'm fortunate enough that my passion job has, got to overtake any aspect of filling the gaps. I think it's important to have that flexibility because you never know where a contact comes from. Like I've had times where I've had no work on and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's from a contact that I made years ago through another friend and, or because I just came out for the day to help out.
Sure.
Whatever. Like you don't know where these things come from. So you've always got to try and make yourself available and always go out and give 100% to whatever you do. I've turned down countless short films and little projects like that, aren't really paying me enough to survive, but that's not always an issue for me. If I can't give my all to a project, then I don't want to be there because you just end up giving yourself a bad name, rather than what you're trying to achieve. The whole point of taking something that maybe doesn't have money on offer is to make more contacts, to build up your resume, and to have something to show people. Now, if you're trying to cram that in to an otherwise already busy schedule and you're not going to give them the time to get it done right, or you're not going to give yourself the time to get it done right, then it just seems to backfire, which is a shame because a lot of people forget that you're doing them a favor.
Absolutely.
But it's important to just remember that. And quite often, I don't know how that would work for you, but I used to, when someone used to call me up for a short film in the early days, and they would say like, yeah, we're going to shoot a short film in 6 days, which amazed me because I've shot, like you can shoot an hour's worth of TV in 6 days if you really wanted to, which I've done. But sometimes if I've not been so sure about it, or it's not something that people I've already known, I would quite often say, well, look, I can offer you a day or two, right? Or I'll come out and boom a couple of days. And the people that are worth working for come back and say, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We'd love to use you. We'll be in touch. The people that aren't worth working for are the ones that are like, well, this is ludicrous. We need someone for the whole week. They're trying to, and you're asking more, not realizing the worth that you're giving them, right? By 2 days of your time.
It's worth a lot.
Has a big value to it, even
That's
if you're just starting out. And it's important to remember that. And if you can do the job, you're worth it. So.
Do you I suppose that kind of one of the questions I had was like if you've got any kind of advice for people starting in the field, which I know is a very hard question for anyone in our industry to offer up, because I personally, from my perspective, don't think there's a preset route that you can take.
There isn't. No, there isn't.
So would you say your advice is literally get out there, mess up, learn from it, buy some kit, don't spend too much money, do some projects, go to a good film school that can get you some connections?
Yeah, like if you can get to a film school, or there are. Any advice I give now is pre-COVID-19, so I don't know how many of these apprenticeship programs, but I know the British Film Institute had like a trainee program, especially from people from minority backgrounds or harder, people that would historically find it harder to get into the film industry. Skill set, I don't know if they're still around, but they are kind of funded by the government to help training in the film industry and the media industry. If failing that, then look at these hire companies. Like I say, one of the benefits of you, say, instead of buying the Neumann off Amazon or whatever, if you hire one, every time you go to hire it, you go into a kit room and you meet other people, and there might be someone else hiring a Neumann next to you, right? Like you don't, it's another way to connect. So if you can reach out to these companies that, the rental companies, you can get in there, start at the ground, learn the gear, and then you start to meet other sound people coming in and saying, I want to come out. Or like, why have you just rented
this
50 microphones? Yeah, why have you got 50 microphones? Do you need a hand? I'll just come out, So many opportunities available to you. So
be open.
Be open, smile. You never know who is really who. Like I try to be kind to everyone on a film set. It's hard when you're tired, but everyone's part of the team, and I've seen people take it out on the runners or people like that, and one, I just don't see the point. They're not, they're not the people in charge. They're just relaying the information. But also, 5 years later, that runner could be a producer, right?
That's right.
You have to be kind to everyone. And,
it's definitely a small industry. It's definitely, if even going through, like looking through Facebook, you meet a new connection and you're like, oh, hang about, him and her, and oh, okay, I did that, and you suddenly start to see the picture develop. Yeah. So I think there's part of that. I mean, I think it's difficult because I definitely I can remember taking up a project that was going to be for free, as a feature film for free. And like, wow, that's for a composer to write, 60 minutes of music or whatever for free, and whatever else, which I was open to, and I said I'd do it. But I think it's like you say, it's how then I think there was a period of time where I got an email on like a Friday night, and I thought, well, I'll get back to that on Monday, and it's like, there was then a question mark about my commitment, and I kind of thought, well, you're not paying me, dude. Like, this is going to be quite an uptaking. And yeah, I didn't email you back on a Friday night, and so maybe I had the wrong attitude there. But the project never took off. It never went anywhere. It never was shot.
Yeah. This is where you have to kind of gauge, and I get better at reading. I would always get an email, right? And I read the email, and you get better at gauging, what they're offering, right? Like, and who they are as a person and how they're going to treat you, right?
That's right.
Like, if someone was emailing me on a Friday night or something about that, I would either expect them, if they wanted a response, I would expect them to explain the urgency and appreciate that it's my weekend, or just ignore it and be happy that I responded on a Monday, right?
That's right.
You have to protect yourself.
I think that's right. I think it's, I suppose from my point of view is that, like, it's like there wasn't much gratitude there that, actually I was willing to engage in, and I was starting to network, because I always do that. If I'm working on a film, I like to try and talk to the actors, the actresses. I like to kind of, if I can, I'll go down to the set and sort of see what's going on. And there's always quite an intense relationship between, in my experience anyway, between the composer and the director is always quite intense.
Yes.
And you have to invest a lot of time talking about a lot of subjects. I'll start talking about philosophy, and like what's your favorite philosopher will be normally depending on who it is, obviously, but that's normally a question, because it's like I'm trying to actually get inside their brain and understand how they see the world, because how they see the world is going to be the color of their film.
Mm-hmm.
And that is quite you should be in the studio writing the cues, but actually you're out in a coffee shop in the center of London, talking about all these kind of things, because you're trying to build that relationship. And I think you touched on a really good point there, where I have tried to, is it worth me kind of going through that? Is this project gonna, I suppose if you take Scarlett Johansson working on something like Under the Skin, really weird move, you could say, for her, but I kind of understand is keeping her in that indie, sort of it's a smart move. It's keeping you in. It's keeping her keeping her grounded. That's right.
It's like for a composer, it could be really easy to go off and make a load of money writing jingles for adverts or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But nobody's in it for that.
No.
Right. So I always find the same, and that's why I think I said earlier, like, the money isn't always important to me, but I want to be treated fairly, right? And some of the best short films I've ever made, I was paid minimum wage, and everyone was paid minimum wage. It didn't matter who you were, and everyone was paid the same. And I felt appreciative about that. And actually, I did one short film where I was paid minimum wage, where we wrapped on late on a Friday night, and we had a little wrap party on the Saturday. And I woke up very late on the Saturday, and I just checked my bank, and my invoice had already been paid. And I went to the wrap party and said to the producer, like, wow, why have you paid my invoice already? I only just sent it in last night when we wrapped. And he said, well, you're working for me for next to nothing. It's the bottom that I could pay anyone. The least I could do is make sure it was in your account as soon as I could.
It's a good guy.
And so you need to, and you develop, depending on what kind of work you're doing in the sound industry or whatever, you need to find questions that you can ask people that help you understand who they are and how they're going to treat you. Are they going to treat you fairly?
Or not.
Or not. And then, but then you still have to be careful if you're working for free, like, with that feature film you did, that could have an adverse effect on your career if you went about it the wrong way.
Precisely that. And I think it's touching on what you said there as well. I've had it as well, where it's like, we're sort of paying certain people, we're not paying other people. And I'm thinking,
it's hard to pay a composer fair, right? And often I'm the only paid person on a film set because everyone wants to shoot, everyone wants to act.
That's right.
Composers are always looking to try and get their music out there, but to get a guy to stand on set with a stupid boom in his hand, right? Nobody wants to do that, and nobody can do it well.
It's a niche role, mate, and I think it's that. But again, it's the family. I think this element of family keeps coming through to me. Long hours, family, kind of keeping it. You're in this workforce for a long time. You touched briefly on the kind of work hour difference between the UK and Canada. Do you think has there been kind of I spoke a couple of days ago to a chap who lives in Michigan, and we were talking. This is from a composer standpoint. We were talking about even in America. Do you have to live in LA? Can you live in Michigan? That was kind of a conversation we had, kind of working extensively in both kind of across the ponds, if you like.
Yeah.
Besides those work hours, I was actually quite surprised that you said that, because I don't know why, it just surprised me. I almost thought it'd be the opposite way around.
Part of the reason is that the crew are not the biggest expense on a show, right? Even when they pay us double time or whatever, the biggest expenses is the studio rental, the equipment rental, the actors, and the actors as they get as they get bigger, they have bigger schedules that you only have them for a few weeks in a project or for a few months, so you have to cram it in, right? Sure. So they make the day as long as possible because the crew are cheap. Sure. I don't necessarily mind it because, I'm sitting here during COVID quite happily because, when I work long hours. If I only worked a 40-hour week, I wouldn't, have the money to
save up and, absolutely keep it going.
Now. So I don't mind it. Yeah, sometimes it gets you like, why? Still here. And back home, the days were only long when they needed to be. Here, sometimes they're just long and I don't get it. And that's the one I hate the most, like when time is just wasted. But, it's about playing around and trying to find the right performance and getting the scene as it can be. But I do find that after about 12 hours of work, you're not getting the best of me.
No.
Probably even after 10, you're not getting the best of me. So
you're going through the motions in an autopilot, I suppose, and it's
And there has been talks, of post-COVID, that the hours might be reduced because it's not good for your health either, and it's not good for everyone involved. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But then also, like, my work is I'm on set. Like I turn up, especially as I'm not the mixer. I don't have to prepare much for the day. I can maybe read the script pages the day before, but I turn up, deal with the day, and I leave. And I need everyone else there to do it. Now, when I've done anything on my computer, editing or, music related or anything like that, you could just stay up all night. You're like, I just got to
It's never finished. It's never finished. Yeah.
You just got to keep going at it, which is tough. And I think that's partly why I ended up going down the route I did, because I just didn't want to live in a bedroom doing what I was doing. No.
It's definitely a thing. I get better. It's like by me doing this podcast, that's really helped me get talking to people. And I'm meeting more people now all the time, and I'm sort of like I'm starting to go. I did kind of like sort of go into my bedroom, and I'm not coming out for 5 years like that. I did. Yeah. I've kind of gone through that, and now I'm kind of coming out the other side of that, and starting to want to kind of for a long time. It's weird. I almost didn't really want to talk to anyone. I wanted to just get in and just write my notes and fiddle around with sample libraries, but that isn't really me. I'm quite an outgoing guy, and I'm finding that I'm starting to get out of the studio more and focus my time better. So I think definitely it's every job
that would make you a better composer too, right? Like just being out there and involved in life and
definitely
finding inspiration even recording. I remember I listened to Billie Eilish talking about her song Bad Boy and how they got certain elements that they just recorded in the street,
Absolutely. I think it's being a composer is weird because you're basically trying to write about a human experience from an emotional standpoint. and it can be tricky where you're trying to fill in perhaps where the director didn't capture a specific emotion, and that can sometimes be tricky. And
you can add tension or you can remove it. Or
that's right. That's right. But that can actually weigh heavily on your mental health because you're actually becoming this horrible thing, say, that's happened.
Yes.
You're living it and we're rewatching it, and you can get quite wrapped up in that. So I think, shutting everything down and going out for a 20-minute walk or ringing the director and saying, "Hey man, how's it going?" is really important, because otherwise people see you after like a month and you're just miserable because you've just been sort of definitely I'm getting out there and recording stuff. And I mean, you say that with Billie Eilish, one of the tracks I did at uni was Maritime Discoveries, was literally me with a crappy Alesis £90 handheld recorder walking through the streets of Brighton, to uni and back. So I had about 40 minutes of recording. And I just chopped it all up and like made an ambient track from buses and dogs barking and people talking and sort of put it all together, and through time stretching and reversing and fading and all that stuff, I came up with a really cool track, and that was not even touching an instrument. So I think you're right. I think from that, and definitely from a sound design, I don't like this term sound design because it confuses people, and I don't know whether maybe there's something you might be able to kind of fill in as well. I know it goes into like post really, but me as a film composer, I'll put these droney elements in and these droney atmospheres, and that is kind of, to me, sound design. But it kind of merges the gap.
Between the composer and...
it's really weird.
In terms of a big film then, is that... and then quite often I think a composer would hand over stems. So you would hand over not just the recorded track, you would hand over stems of it. So, you had the strings and the drums and whatever. So that then the mixer, the post-production mixer, could still affect the mood slightly with what you get. Like, so the drone would be quite low,
slightly
maybe
different
at a certain point, and they can bring up the strings and they still have some play.
Your dub.
I think though, from what I've heard, it depends on who's willing to give up, their
stems,
their creative control, right?
Yeah.
This is my, do Absolutely. I want to hand over what I've done to someone else
to then do that? There's another. You got dub and re-recording, and is it dub in the UK or is it a re-recording in the States?
Yeah, I think dub in the UK, re-recording in the States. Yeah.
So that's another difference then between the UK and the US.
There's lots of different tasks, and a few people have different titles, different responsibilities. I work in a union under IATSE, which isn't the case back home, which has its pluses and it has its negatives. I think there's more plus than negative, but both are there. To go back on what you were saying a minute ago, and it's interesting actually that you said that there were tracks that you made 10 years ago that are slowly starting to make you money now. I think if I was approached to do a feature film for free, one of the things I would say is I want to keep control of the tracks. Like these aren't yours, these are mine, and you can use them in the film, because then down the line you can maybe use them again. Now, obviously, if the film becomes very successful, that might be a different conversation. But you could also say, well, if the film becomes successful, then we can talk about licensing the track in a better way for you.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's sometimes we get, I've taken gross points before, but then of course the project, I had a lot of time, man, where the project just didn't get off the ground.
They never, like, there's only been a couple of films in history where people have really made money out of points. And part of that is just the same way any of us run business, is that you're trying to keep the overall income down so that you have less tax liability. And if you've got to give all the crew money because your film made a lot of money, then you're going to try and show that it didn't make any money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, that's why I went for gross points. Yeah.
So
I was smart with that one. The net points, no. Gross points, yeah. There's conversations around there, and I think you're right. I think there's definitely been where I've kind of sat there and thought, look, I've got like 100 cues now. And these ones really were on a ident, some digital ident, and never really went anywhere. And it's like, well, look, let's open a session. The intro to this podcast, which I did very quickly, I'll replace it at some point. I just wanted to get something out there. But that's an old track I did in like 2010.
There you go. Yeah.
Ripped the brass out of it and just sort of recorded over it. And it's, or stuff of old films that perhaps, went to the festival, did okay, but then were shelved. It's like, well, that score's sitting there and it's half an hour. So it's like, right, let's strip it out. Let's send it off to production library. It's that, obviously now we're talking about composers, but I think it's all that sort of stuff. I have to make my money differently, I suppose. You
have to work smart. Like, don't keep composing stuff over and over again when you've already got it.
Exactly that. And COVID for me has been, obviously for you, because I think that's one thing I've always said to anyone trying to go freelance is save some damn money, because you are going to be out of work at times, and or you just need time off, or or you say you get ill, whatever you need to have that buffer. I think anyone should have at least like 3 months rent,
minimum for our industry.
So that's, for me, it's actually been okay. I've done a short film during the lockdown, which is kind of...
Well, this is actually, post people can keep working, right? And actually you can monopolize on this, whereas I am basically sat on the sofa because I have to be on set, right?
Exactly that.
But I've also been prepared for this because my life comes and goes in work, and I'm busy working and then I'm sat on the sofa, and then I'm busy working and sat on the sofa. So, I had a good run for a few years.
Absolutely.
I was really busy here, and I was really busy before I arrived here. So, I'm okay with it.
Absolutely, and I kind of love the fact, because I'd like to, if a few things kind of go my way, I'd like to come over to the States next year. Yeah. And with you being in Toronto, it's not a long.
No, it's not
long, man.
Yeah,
so we can, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do for next year. Is when I spoke to Grant, he's a good friend of mine, a Michigan composer, and we kind of said, look, let's meet up in LA, and that's my kind of, when I came over in 2015, it was definitely more of a holiday, and although I touched a little bit on, I went to a few studios and I went to Sony and saw the scoring stage, the Barbra Streisand stage, and kind of like found some places. I was a bit reserved then, in that I was on holiday and I was kind of like, it wasn't, whereas this time I think it's definitely going to be holiday, but work.
Yeah, maximise your opportunity.
And maximise my time there, mate.
Yeah.
Mike, I mean, obviously I'm going to link down your IMDb for all the guys, both on the audio version and the video version. Is there any kind of, I think we've gone through pretty much the questions. Is there anything you wanted to add to the podcast?
I don't think so. No, I think I kind of covered it. I guess one of the things I wanted to get out of it is helping other people move forward, and get to where they want to get. So I think we covered that. Work hard. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of. But know that if someone asks you to come work for you for them, and they don't want to pay you the going rate, then what can you get out of it? Remember that. And make sure that there's an understanding that you're both getting something out of it. Like that film you were talking about. Make sure they know that it's a two-way street. You're not just providing them with a score for free. You're getting something out of it too.
That's right. I think that's good advice.
Be it stock, music stacked up in your library or contacts, or that you can then put the film on your website, or whatever. Just try and get something out of it for yourself.
I think that's good advice, mate. Just makes that has definitely been the big take home. It is about to and fro and teamwork and mutual respect and I think if any one of those sides goes down in an industry as tough with the long hours, you're going to fail. It's going to go wrong. It's going to get sour. Sour quick. Well, Mike, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I mean, I'm
Pleasure.
sure
nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. We must keep in touch more often, mate. It's really bad. We've been awful at it, but that's life. That's the way it goes.
That's what's been great about COVID, though, right? It's like everyone got to stop. Everyone's like, okay, guys, because like my industry stopped. Well, I get downtimes in my work all the time, but I'm thinking, well, there's another job running. Like, shouldn't I be? I should be working. Whereas there's nothing running. Nobody's working. We can just all stop and think about it. Spend time with family.
Take stock. Absolutely, take stock.
And get ready, because it's going to get busy again. One of the things I always learnt most, especially as January, February used to be the quiet time, but it became the busy time like any other in recent years. But I would always make sure I had everything in order, ready to go. And it took me a while to learn this, but you had to make sure you were in a ready position so that when the phone rang, you were ready to go.
You could pick up your bag and go. And I suppose actually there's one thing I was going to say, because there's a few conversations I've had with a few people kind of darted around different industries, and the word seems to be that most people have consumed most of Netflix, or they've consumed most of Apple Amazon Prime, or even Apple Originals they're doing now. And I think you're right. I think there's going to be quite a big, while it may be to begin with, like you say, you think the hours are going to be less. I kind of think these companies are going to want to get their content out that's been sitting there for months.
I think it could either go two ways. We could either, like, as soon as production's back, it could ramp up like crazy, just to fill these gaps and supply the demand. And I also, you never know, people, like, I'm kind of bored of watching Netflix right now. Maybe it's because there's nothing on there, but the weather's nice and I want to get out. So it could go either way, you know. Luckily, I've always had work, and I think working in sound and especially is very adaptable. You know, I could adapt what I do into many different things, and there's always going to be sound and there's always going to be camera when it comes to filming, be it, you know, a reality show or a big high-end film. There's always going to be those two people on set working. So I'm glad for that, but I don't know. I always said that this was a job that I would always, if it ever just stopped and it dried up, I'd always say, well, I made my money there. That was great. Down payment on a house. Life is good.
That's right.
And think back about, although in reality, I'm probably never going to leave it. I'm sure it'll come back just fine, and I'll be doing it for the rest of my life. Yeah.
So I think once you got used to those hours and once you got used to that lifestyle, it's very hard to quit. And I think a lot of this lockdown as well is, I think maybe for the first sort of month, even you could say, some people were kind of fine with it. I've been busy, so I've been okay, but there's no way I could sit on a couch for 3 months.
No.
And I just not like that. I just would have to start. I'd start learning French.
I don't know what I would do in my if I work 9 to 5s. I don't know what I would do in my evenings. Actually, I don't, because you can't. You know, it's only a couple of hours. You can't do much with it. I could go to the gym and cook, whatever. But yeah, it's not made for me. And you know what? Like, I see loads of people that come on a film set their first time, and it's not for them. You know, it's just not. And I don't think you should be afraid of that. I think if it's not for you, it's not for you. If something's not right or something doesn't suit you, find what does.
Definitely. I mean, I think when I at uni, I asked one of the guys, you know, why did you not go into it? You're good. You can write good songs. Why did you not go into it? And he said, I don't want to work that hard.
Yeah.
He was very honest. He didn't want to work 15-hour days in a dark room, and you know, he wanted, I suppose, that 9 to 5 teaching, and that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No.
You know, and if anything, I appreciated his honesty.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's important too. I think, especially in terms of if you're asking someone in an education capacity, like, you know, why? What's the deal? You know?
Absolutely. I really appreciated his honesty, and I think it was a, and it also gave me a little bit of a, you know, like, I suppose the teaching side of it for me, I suppose, sort of goes onto my YouTube, where,
yes,
you know, I do try to put videos out there, and it feels great when I got a comment 2 days back from this chap, and he's like, you've absolutely saved me hours. I've been so frustrated. Like, I've not been able to get my system working, and I just didn't know what to do. And thank you so much. And it's like, actually, you know, hey, I did that video for free, really. Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I want to get I want to get some ad rev, right?
Yeah,
but like, the message that chap sent me, like, because we've all been there, man, where we can't get our session running or something's going, and it's so frustrating, and it just kills the creativity. And that message to me meant a lot, which makes me think that, you know, that an element of teaching isn't necessarily out of my remit. I probably could do some teaching if I wanted to.
No, and the other thing I think to remember is, I don't know if our industry is that as unique in this way, but there's probably more hobbyists than there are professionals, right? There's probably more people making little films here and there than there are professionals doing it. And so that fills into that market.
Definitely, there's always someone. Absolutely, there's always.
And that's the other important thing that guy did, and what you do too, is to reach out to people. If there's a YouTube channel, or if there's a composer you like or something, just, you know, reach out and say, hey, thank you. You know, that goes a long way, and it might be another contact. You never know, right?
Yeah, you do additional music, or you do. Yeah, it's definitely and that's one thing as well, man. Like, I spent, you know, I kind of do all these tracks, and then I sort of put out I do the, you know, this album's out this Saturday, you know, and no one cares. So whatever.
Yeah.
Like, people are sick of that sort of stuff on the internet, you know. And I thought, well, actually, how much time have I actually spent, you know, going online, seeing a post like that, and then actually listening to it. And I thought, yeah, I do it, but I'm sort of not really practicing what I preach. It's like I'm expecting someone to kind of check out something. Obviously, Aurora's grown into a bit of a label now, and I've got acts signed to it. And which has been really cool as well. It's been a nightmare with the fight with the business side of it, but it's been good. But it's like, you know, I should start listening to people's stuff and sharing it out and posting it out. I've started trying to do that every couple of days.
And send them a message and say, hey,
great track.
I like what you did.
Absolutely. And this has been great. This AuroraCast stuff's been wicked. You know, some of the conversations I've been having with people has just been incredible, and it grows you. It grows your mind, and you get different you know, sort of sections of other people's lives and the things they've been through, and you take a lot away from it. So there's definitely this give and take to this. I think if you're going to basically be an arse, you're not really going to get on in this industry, are you?
No, they don't last very long.
They're in the door and out.
And
the
actually,
side,
that's one of the number one questions I get is like, well, how are the actors? You know, and they go, especially when you're on a really big film. Now, let me tell you, when you have a $200 million film, the last thing you want is an arse being the lead actor, right? They don't last very long because you need them to be reliable, stable, you know, turning up on time. That's a lot of money invested in one person. So you have to present yourself as that. And I kind of, you know, I do the same as what I do. And, you know, like if you're going into London to meet a director, like present yourself well, you know, show them that even if they're not paying you, show them that you're actually worth a lot more, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't turn up in grubby shorts and a string vest sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
It's still a business, right? So yeah, there's not most, and again, that's like when I said earlier, like how sometimes it's harder to work on the smaller projects because the people that aren't pleasant to work with often fall down the ladder. Then that if you're on a small project, that makes, you know, much harder to work with, you know?
Well, yeah, they can kill a whole project, and I've seen it happen. They can literally destroy an entire project because I've seen it where people get like halfway through the production and say it's like a really low budget, gross points, profit share style thing, and then suddenly they just demand money. Right. You know, I'm not going to continue, and then the producers are there going, what do you mean? We can't pay you. This has been agreed, you know, and that one person ends up, then the project's gone for everyone.
Yes.
Just because they were like that. But then that you see, and I've seen that happen. But then you go and look on their IMDb, and they've done nothing since 2016 or whatever. It affects you, man, because and rightly, and so it should do as well, you know, because everyone's been working for next to nothing, really long hours, putting loads of passion into it, and then just because they just start throwing their weight around unnecessarily. You know,
it should be a collaborative process, and the smaller the budget, the more collaborative it is. So on a really big film, I have absolutely nothing to do with anything other than sound. But if I'm on a tiny little project, I might help the camera guy, or I might help the lighting guy, or I might, you know, be more involved with the story, or you know.
Well, then you learn.
And I think that's important, you know.
Well, then you learn. It's like you know, I've been talking. One thing that's been great again is with this camera stuff. Is suddenly I'm starting to actually message filmmakers and say, "Dude, how would I go about doing this?" Like I bought a couple of lights just to try and get me a bit brighter.
Yeah.
I took some advice on that because I knew nothing about it and whatever else. And you know, then this kind of like the OBS I've been using for years, but talking about the difference between broadcast and film, and it gives you a bit more of an appreciation and an understanding if you jump in and do those jobs. So I think by you spending the time to like, right, let's go and check in with the lighting guys.
Yeah.
It gives you an understanding of their job, and then
yes.
And then suddenly everyone's got an appreciation for what each element of that.
And it's a great time to figure that out on a small project when you can do that sort of thing, because when you're on something bigger, you can't. And I remember being on my first, you know, TV drama sets. I was in awe. I was like, what's going on here? What are all these people, and what's all their jobs, you know, and all these things. Learn these things. Sometimes I don't even give myself credit for knowing anymore, but because they just become second nature. But that's the best time to do it. And you should remember that. Like when you start out in the career and you're on these little projects and stuff, you should remember. And I don't like it when people start being rude to people because they're not being professional. You know, it's like, no, we're all here to learn, and we're all here to play around. And if you want professional, then you can pay professional.
It's a fair point.
If they're not doing that, then they get you for who you are, and stand up for yourself. You're providing them a service.
Yeah, and a lot of the time as well, that service is because even a basic understanding, right, of a microphone, an XLR cable, phantom power for a condenser, this is a gain switch, there's the EQ, that someone hasn't just done that in 2 seconds. Like I've been on like a day course where they tried to, it was for an events team, and they tried to basically show people who'd never looked at a sound disc, never looked or considered a microphone at all. And they're trying to teach them how to essentially use a handheld, wireless mic, a lavalier, and it's all going through transmitters and receivers. And I was and a really cheap like Behringer desk, and I was kind of like, yeah, okay, like boom, 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 because I've been doing it for God knows how long.
Yeah.
But some people, man, they're like, you say what now? 48 volts and what, and I think some people's kind of, I think we forget as well that actually, that is a skill that you've not just gone and bought this gear, plugged it in, and started talking into it. It's been years.
Well, I always explain to people that my job, apart from the physical aspect of booming, my job in the most part can be very straightforward, very easy, especially when I'm just recording a corporate gig and I have nothing more than what I have now, a recorder and a microphone above an actor. Easiest gig in the world, but when something goes wrong, you have to know. And I've done lots of second unit work on these big films like Mission Impossible there, where I might not do anything for a week, like there was a day on Mission Impossible where on the second unit there where I did nothing for a whole week. And then just before we were about to go home, they said, we're bringing over Alec Baldwin and Tom Cruise. We're going to shoot them against the green screen. We've just got him for 5 minutes and we got to do this shot. So it's like, I'm sat there for a week, having been drinking loads of coffee and eating all the snacks, going like, and then all of a sudden, they get up there and I go bang, 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 bang. And they go, okay, guys, thanks for a great day. And I'm like, oh my word. And that made me realize that I'm paid for what I can do. I'm not paid for what I do. I'm paid for my ability, and what I can provide.
Absolutely, and you hear as well, like there's another thing I keep hearing is like, people who will charge like a ridiculous amount of money, say for like half an hour's work, and it's like, yeah, but that's 20 years or whatever.
Yes, of learning and playing around and getting it right.
To be able to do that in half an hour, and people just don't see it. They don't see it, and it's So I think that's really important. I mean, I really have got an appreciation for lighting teams, because just me trying to light me in my room.
Oh yeah. I know, and it's a balance, right? Because you think you just throw a light in your face, and then all of a sudden something else is wrong, right?
Yeah, because
it's
shadows
really hard work. Yeah.
And I honestly thought, okay, I didn't think it was quite as simple as that, but I honestly thought I could get one of these box lights, fire it on me. No,
Yeah.
I'm firing it into the corner of the room and bouncing the light off the wall.
Yeah.
And it's like painting with light. And it's an art, and it's kind of. And I think you can as well. I think you can have like the most expensive. You could be in there with all your reds and really expensive cameras, but if the lighting's wrong, screwed.
Yeah.
And I suppose but I would say this, and I am biased, but I definitely do believe that you can get away with the odd dodgy shot.
Yeah, you can, especially in documentaries.
Yeah.
The story lies in the sound, and we know this because. How many times, someone said, hey, watch my short film, and the sound is awful and you just want to switch off. Mm-hmm. But if you can hear it, it doesn't matter if the camera bubbles a bit, It's like, okay, like the story's there. And I think that's why, it's actually like people, like other people at the film school that I studied with laughed at us in the sound department because we were out making money straight away, It's like, you guys are working already. Because nobody wants to do sound for free.
No.
Really.
Well, it's long work, mate. It's just like, I mean, the one shot I did 10 hours was the longest I did in a day as a boom. And it was a great fun, but it didn't get released. But it was great fun, And
I think you should do it. And I think it's a great time to, and I'm sure I've said this already, like now, if I had a problem with my recorder, I would instantly look to see if I had phantom power, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm like, well, is this a phantom powered mic? Oh no, it's T-power. Okay, let me see if I can deal with that. Whereas on a short film, when you're just starting out, you might not be so quick to discover that. Don't be afraid of that. Just,
get on with it and do it.
Sorry, guys, I need 5 minutes. I'm going to figure it out and I'll get back to you. You know,
absolutely. Things
Don't
go
worry
wrong.
about it.
Yeah, things go wrong, and the worst thing is, I'm sure there's people who've stood there for an hour knowing that they've not recorded.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, that's totally happened. I've heard stories of that all the time.
You're like why?
That is the worst thing. They're really gonna hate you afterwards.
And that person's heart rate and how they feel and all the anxiety while they've stood there knowing. Why? Why put yourself through? I'd rather just admit I'm an absolute idiot, sack me, than like.
Yeah,
I'm just going to keep rolling for 10 hours or whatever.
I tell you though, there has been times where I'm freaking out about like my AC unit that I keep pointing to. That would be freaking the hell out of me all the way through an interview. When really you play it back through, and actually I always found the best way for me to check anything was to play it back through my laptop speaker. And if it sounded great through my laptop speaker, I was happy about it. Because I'm looking for absolute perfection, right? Which not everyone is. And actually you don't, when you turn your headphones up so loud you can hear absolutely everything, then play it through the laptop. It's fine.
Or Apple AirPods as well. Great test. Apple AirPods are great.
Yeah.
AirPods even. It doesn't have to be AirPods.
Well, that's because also that's what people are listening to, right?
They're correct. Absolutely. And I think
the iPhone.
Yeah.
If you're not testing, that's always been an important thing. If you're not testing it through the medium that it's gonna go out over, it's like these short films, grading their film and making it looking great for the one time it's going to be played on the big screen. No, you want it so that, someone can watch it while sitting on the toilet on their iPhone. Because that's when people are realistically going to watch your film. That's when you get people's attention.
It's a sad state of affairs, mate. We've gone from people watching it on their toilet, but you are right, or on the train. I mean, especially for TV shows.
Yeah.
On their iPad on a train.
And I don't think we shouldn't be afraid of this. We should adapt to this. And the people that are going to survive and the people that are going to do well are the people that just accept it for what it is. And it's been incredible during this COVID time to see how businesses just adapt like that. They're just on a dime. They're like, some businesses have started up. Yeah, loads of businesses have failed, and it's been really sad to see.
Definitely.
But some businesses are brand new, who've just arrived on the scene, and it's incredible to see. I don't know if you found it in the UK. So many companies have come out with masks that they've been making, and they've readapted their plants to do these things. And seeing restaurants adapt to takeout. There's a nice restaurant near me here where they've adapted, and they're like a pop-up grocery store, and they sell really nice things. And I think that's great. Like,
absolutely,
you've got to adapt, and this is COVID-19 has been a great reminder of that. That you have to adapt.
Well, there's a grocery store up near my mum, and when I say a grocery store, there's a company that used to get up and go into London, pick up all the groceries and deliver it to the restaurants.
Yes.
Well, now he's started doing that for people.
Smart.
So he still was going up and collecting his fruit and veg. And then he's delivering it to people, and he had a whole like COVID safe way of doing it.
Yeah.
Or there's a brewery I'm quite friendly with, Dorking Brewery.
Yes. And, I remember you saying that, and they're delivering.
Yeah, they started delivering, mate, because their business, no one's buying,
Yeah. The pub beer. Yeah.
Someone being arrested outside your place.
Yeah, I have actually, just so my AC wasn't on full whack, I have the door open, and I do live.
Sorry, let's give it a sec.
In Toronto.
No worries. Downtown Toronto, mate. It's fine. But yeah, the brewery, they adapted in terms of that now, and then apparently they're making the same sort of cash flow as they were when they were selling to the pubs. So their business, once we come, it's going to be I think around about July. Well, I think late July the pubs will start opening. If they keep that home business, they've doubled their profit.
Yeah,
and that's great. So I think it's definitely been. I panicked at first, and I've always got a few months float in both personal and business, and obviously now with it being a bit of label, it's like I have royalties I have to pay out, and that's a responsibility. So I've always got that sitting there.
Yeah.
I had to sell. I had a Native Instrument kind of drum pad that I wasn't using.
Yeah.
I had to sell that.
Yeah.
But just to kind of get a bit more liquid. So but generally I haven't really been hit.
But that's smart. I think it's you've got to, like I said before, the gear is here to make you money and help you do your job. And if it's sat there doing nothing, sell it.
Yeah, don't need it.
Like I've toyed about selling this recorder because I haven't used it in a couple of years. But also, it's like I don't know if I do go out and use it, then that opens up new opportunities. So there's an element to it, where you've got to speculate to accumulate. But if it's not earning you money, get rid of it, and get rid of it when you can get rid of it as soon as possible, because that thing will be superseded down the line, and it will lose its value, and no one will be interested in it.
Definitely. I mean, and you're right there, because that was like the third edition, and I sold it for 40 quid less than I bought it. I mean, it wasn't all my kit's in good. I don't muck around with my gear. Yeah. I look after it, and that's the most saddest thing, man. You see someone sort of like chucking XLRs around, and you're like, dude, like, come on, man, like, have a little bit of. Just have a little bit of respect.
But see, that's because you work in a studio. You should see some of the places I'm dragging an XLR through. It's horrible. It's horrible. They're there to work.
It's true. Yeah, it's just true. It's true. There's one guy, Devindo, is a lovely guy. He came onto the podcast, and he does a lot of broadcast stuff. And he watched it. Brilliant. Yeah. He was kind of saying, just blow your Mac up. Just use it. It's there to be used and abused.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and don't be too kind with the gear. It's there to make money, right?
Exactly. Yeah, just use it to the best of its ability. Absolutely.
Don't look after it. Keep it clean. Keep it well maintained. Make sure it's ready to go. But don't worry if it gets wear on it. That's the idea. It's there to make you cash.
It's there to be used and abused for your business. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's loads of. I mean, I think as well. I think you've got to look at kind of like, I could have sold this mic years ago, but it's actually become my staple now.
Yes,
and I've still kept the boom pole because I don't know. I mean, I don't have any immediate plans to.
Yeah, you're probably only going to make a couple of pints from Dorking Brewery if you sold it, right? Like you're not going to. It's not worth.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Sometimes it's worth keeping something around.
Exactly that, but I found as well sometimes it's useful when they take Dorking Brewery, for instance, or a local business. Let's say they needed an ad made and they wanted to do it cheap. Well, by me having that pole, I could go, or I could lend it. I could either go and do it, or I could just lend it out. And take this gear and just at least don't just put some rubbish. Let's do it at least semi properly. So that's why I kind of keep it. You never know when you're going to kind of use it. And I suppose in some respects, it's not a high end pole. That NI thing was worth 600-700 quid. It was is an expensive bit of kit in some way. So I think you got to measure it out as well. But definitely that whole there's a chap that you might have come across on. I know you watch a lot of YouTube. Matt Diavella.
Right. No.
Really cool guy, man. Check him out. He's gone massive, and he talks a lot about minimalism and essentialism and minimalizing personal finances and whatever else, and workouts and like life stuff. His stuff looks great. Like he's a really good filmmaker as well. I think you'd like his stuff. And he was talking a lot about that, about essentialism and look, if it's just clogging up your, he's a minimalist, but his camera cupboard's ridiculous. The hard drives everywhere and whatever because he needs it for his business.
Yeah.
And I think that's that balance. Like you keeping. I would say that for you, keeping a recorder, a boom, and a mic, those are things you probably should have in your life forever.
Yes, it's always going to be there because you never know.
It's your staple.
What kind of what's going to happen? Yeah, and
it's just...
I sold my radio mics when I left the UK because I just knew that I didn't. They weren't going to be transferred well over here because the frequencies are different and things like that. So I got rid of them, and I'm close to buying new ones, but then I won't buy them unless I'm going to make the return on them because I can rent them, I can borrow them. It's all these things that make life. I don't need something sat there depreciating in value, getting old when you're not going to use them, when I'm not making money.
Absolutely. Yeah. What if you were to get lavs again? If you're going to go down the route, what would you looking for? What would you be looking for in terms of brand?
Well, it's kind of things are being flipped on their head right now. Electrosonics have been the big player for a while and still are, but we're slowly getting better at digital radio mics. And apart from the fact that they just sound better, they also need less spectrum to fit in. So you can fit a lot more radio mics. And with mobile phones taking up more of the the spectrum available, with 5G and everything.
Yeah.
The space that we can fit our radio mics into is becoming much more narrow. So right now I'm actually better off holding off, waiting for better digital radio mics to happen. Sound Devices bought out a company in the UK called Audio Limited, who made fantastically beautiful sounding radio mics. And they pretty much, they brought out digital radio mics with hardly any delay.
Wow.
And they sound great. They're a little bit bulky right now for some drama work. So I think if they get ahead of the game, I'll buy into them, but I'll have to wait and see. It's a changing market. That again, there's no point. Do your research.
Yeah, don't just go. That's one thing as well. Like I'm looking at buying a camcorder, man.
Yeah.
And it's going to be about $1,000. And there's no way I'm not going to buy that this year, next year, or the year after. But what I'm doing is I'm researching it and I'm asking people. Look, it's in my Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
I have no plans to buy it. I'm just researching it. But I didn't consider that with radio mics in terms of frequencies. And I suppose that is a conversation. If you are doing something digitally over the air, and then you have got everyone's iPhone and everyone's Apple Watch and God knows what else.
A film set's a real. A film set is RF nightmare because everyone's using something remotely. Everything's become remote. It's quite incredible now. The lights are remote. They run off batteries. They just can stick a battery light up in the ceiling, and then they can control it off an iPad. The DITs, the people that look after the cameras in terms of the image capturing, they can control the camera remotely. Everyone's, there's so many things flying around a film set. Everyone's got walkie-talkies. We're sending off feeds everywhere with it. So it's a bit of a mess for RF. So, anything you can do to help with that is important. So going digital could help us a lot. They sound better because we run the radio mics run through a compander, which is basically like a compressor, right? And it just, it's not perfect. Some sound better than others, but if you don't have it balanced just right, it's not so great. Digital, it's great.
Yeah, it just gets rid of all that stuff. I suppose it is things I suppose are changing, and I think I'm fine with digital. I still am not sure what I think about in terms of like automation. And it's great that you can put these lights up and they're battery powered and someone can sit there with an iPad. I think all the time there's a human being sitting there with an iPad, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But it does worry me slightly. It's like, are we going to have like an artificial boom arm that's just moving by some, can the mixer just move a boom around? And it's like, I don't know how that sort of, personally, my personal opinion in these sorts of things is that you need a human being really to operate. If you're a filmmaker and you're trying to tell a story,
yes,
there's AI now that can compose music.
Yeah,
but they can't. I don't think it
they
can
can't
quite
get emotion.
No, it's
like cameras having the focus on a camera is getting better and better, right, all the time. But the focus puller can tell the story with the focus, right? Like by changing the focus by a mere fraction of a second. How many times like say I'm here and there's a door behind me and someone knocks on the door. If the focus puller throws the focus to the door beforehand, you've already spoilt the story. Like you already know something's happening at the door. There's so much you can do with that, and I think you're right. Like there is always going to be an element human. It's like this idea of actors, like digital actors acting in a post-COVID world. I can't see how that's going to happen, and actually, I think there's an adverse effect when animations look too real. It almost gets too close, where you don't like it. You don't understand it, and I think humans are always going to want other humans telling stories and how they go about it. But
100%.
That said, I think if we're going to be smart business people, then we need to think about what's ahead and what is going to happen. Say the boom operator is no more. Well, what's going to replace the boom operator? How do I get into that? Don't just go, no, boom operator till I die, and then all of a sudden the phone never rings again. I want to be whatever the next thing is. Just stay on it.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think a lot of people can be kind of like rigid in their thought there, where
Yes.
I mean,
We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it.
absolutely. I mean, even the musicians I've worked with, they've always worked in the box and they've never really plugged in a cab. They've all been modulation, and I'm like, buy a cab.
Yeah.
Like, what I don't want, and they're scared of it. It's like, well, why? Buy a cab. It's going to sound better. You'll get a different sound. It'll be a different experience for you, And me now, I'm kind of sick of sitting at the computer. So I've started backtracking. Started playing guitar again after years of not really playing it.
Yeah.
And looking to buy synthesizers because I want to sit somewhere else away from all this stuff and your brain interacts differently. So I think you're right. I think if that is the case, if it comes on your radar that boom operators are going to go, it's like, well, okay, what's controlling the boom? How can I learn that? Or how can I? And in some ways, you could say that it would make the production easier if you can control it, and you wouldn't have that solo thing that happened to you. But then you're still gonna need, actors, for instance, with this kind of like, some of the I think some of the best scenes that I can't think of an example off the top of my head now, but where an actor's just kind of like improv the line in a comedy, or they've just come out with something and everyone creases up, and that's real. It wasn't scripted. It was taken. You lose all that with or it'll just come out with some nonsense. What I mean?
We try to cover every actor on set now because so much happens all the time, right? You can't just let someone go unmiked, just in case. But you need that human interaction. I think even if just the boom goes, someone still needs to be on the set running the floor for the sound department.
Exactly.
I don't, nothing's ever gonna quite die. There's people now. There's a move towards exoskeletons for boom operators. Some people are against it. I think it's a great idea. It's nowhere near ready. Like, you can probably use one now for the odd shot here and there out on the street or whatever, but in a set you couldn't. But it's gonna get better. So
it's gonna keep pushing. Well, it's never going to stop, is it?
And here's the problem is when they introduce the exoskeleton for the boom operator and the camera operator so he can hold the camera longer, all of a sudden we're going to start shooting for longer. As technology progresses, we push the boundaries just that little bit further away from where we're at. It's just like we're always going to want a bit more. So,
Yeah, it's a never-changing world.
Yeah, move forward with it.
Move forward with it. It's all fun and games, definitely. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see where we go, and I'm definitely still fascinated by film. While I think I took a couple of years out and I got into producing again in terms of the band, I was in studios recording bands and that sort of thing, while doing more pitchy stuff. It's been incredible, really, to get back doing a short on a small team. This one's been great as well in that, it was the first. I kind of insisted that we had a sound mixer, like a dub.
Yeah.
Because I just said I'm not doing it. I said it's not my job, and really, I actually don't think I'm the best at it. Especially, I could do it on a film that's not mine, that I haven't necessarily composed, but I think I wanted someone else to mix my score in with the dialogue, and
Smart.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I'm yet to hear
because
it.
And you know what too is you're too close to the score. The score is your baby, right?
That's right.
And so you won't be willing to remove the score when the score needs to be removed because it's your baby and you want it in there all the time. But when it actually needs to be removed for the benefit of the film, you need someone there to make that decision.
Absolutely. And
if you can make that call yourself, then all the better, right? Like, if you can do that yourself, then that's great. But
I try to kind of be quiet naturally when I need to be quiet and whatever else. But yeah, there's definitely going to be times where I'm too loud and then the sound effect's too loud. And then it's like someone needs to come in, I suppose, and be unprecious with that and say, look, this is what's best for the picture. And that's why I asked for this. That's why I requested the director because it was a conversation where I would do it. And I said, actually, look, I'd rather not. And like I say, I'm yet to hear it. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm not as well. I mean, the dialogue I got from the film was sounding fine. It's needed a little bit of work here and there.
Yeah.
There was a couple of sort of action, like sort of.
I always find you need at least 2 watches. So at least takes you to the second watch of a film that you worked on to be able to watch it for a film, rather than think about the work that you did in the project.
Definitely. No, definitely. And I mean, I got some feedback, and they're saying as well that the 2 actors in the film, they both loved the music, and that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
Because I think she especially loved what I did for her role, which means that I hopefully was in the same sphere of thinking as she was. And that to me was, I went to bed feeling quite accomplished and quite happy that was received in that way. So, because like I say, I don't think I'd be one of those guys who's like, well, I want my score. It's like the typical, normally it's lead guitarists, they want their solo as loud as possible, and it's like, dude.
Yeah, like, someone said to me actually recently, I loved it. They said only other guitarists enjoy guitar solos, and I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. I was thinking about guitar solos that I really cared for, and there isn't many of them out there. And I always found myself actually with the analogy of being in a band is that I'm the bass player, right? And so I'm not the lead guitarist. The lead guitarist is the camera department or the actor or someone like that. I'm the bass player. I'm the sound guy in the back that we kind of get on and do our work without anyone else. Nobody really knows quite what we're doing. They don't quite understand it. We're just kind of sat in the back, maybe looking at the drummer, just kind of going along with it. And I always thought it kind of made sense how I ended up. And when I interviewed for the film school, the question was, you're not going to be always that appreciated on set. You're always going to be the bass player at the back. And I was happy with that, and I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like I say, it's every person. The person who sort of took the time to make someone a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Or guys, if you thought about having a sandwich or whatever, that person, do you know what I mean? It's every. I think you see those credits roll up, and I get quite offended, even if it's a film that I don't know anyone who's worked on it, say, or whatever. I always sit in a cinema and watch the credits come up.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And that's one thing I'd say, actually, me having a little bit of a pop at Netflix, which I probably shouldn't do, but I'm going to do it. Their new feature where they kind of like, the film finishes, and then they're trying to play it
into the next thing, yeah.
No.
Or they box it.
Yeah, because if I've watched it with a mate or someone, like normally I want to talk about it, and the score's rolling up, and then you've got everyone who worked on it, and you're actually kind of like having a roundup of the film, to the score and whatever else, and it's like, no, stop trying to get me to. I understand why they're doing it.
I don't mind it so much with episodic TV. I quite like watch the intro for the one, and you end up watching all 10 in a day, and the credits roll at the end of the 10th one.
Absolutely,
I get
absolutely.
That, but it's annoying how they're trying to promote
for a film.
The next movie straight away when you just
want
to watch the credits. And I can never hit the right button to get the credits back.
It's like just get me back.
Yeah, because there's only a moment to do it, and I never get it right. I'm like, and then sometimes if it's a show where people I know worked on, or I wanna the best, IMDb's great, but if you really wanna know who people were on a film, look at the end of the film. So sometimes I've tried and I miss it. I can't get it right.
You can't get it right.
Oh, and it still tries to play another film.
That's right. That's right.
Give me a break. Yeah.
It is frustrating, mate, and it really is, and I get quite angry sometimes, because sometimes especially if you watch like quite an introspective story, like I watched Arrival a couple of days ago for the second time.
Good film,
and a brilliant film, and sonically amazing as well. I was like, wow, this is incredible, and I wanted to have a chat to my mate about it, and it's like, hang about, you're trying to get me to watch, Big or whatever it was. Like, well, shut up, go away, And I was interested because obviously Johan Johansson, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago, as I'm sure you know, but his kind of solo cellist has now stepped up, and she scored Joker.
Wow. Okay.
So
that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's another kind of like, I suppose she, they're both Icelandic, they're both colleagues. Yeah. And then I suppose she ended up playing on some of his films. I think she was on Sicario as well, and a couple of other bits that he did. And it was great to see her. I mean, I thought the score for Joker was amazing. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And I really liked the film, but I especially appreciated the score to some of those wackier scenes. I think she did a great job. So I kind of connected those dots through watching the Arrival credits, because that's the composer. So it's great to track her career.
Yeah. And like I was saying before about connections, right? Like it's all about connections, and you can kind of see someone's path by the connections they've made. And like you said, like there's many ways to get to where you want to be, and that's an incredible story. That she didn't start off as a film composer. She was working for a film composer
as a solo cellist. But then you can hear as well. You can hear obviously. I mean, Arrival was a very, again, sound design approach, but you could hear kind of like you could hear those distorted cellos and electric cellos especially, and then if you listen to the Joker, it is very cello based, and it makes sense. It's kind of like you can see how that could have literally been she was on a scoring stage, and I'd imagine they recorded that score in LA.
Yeah, stick to what right? Like
yeah, and it worked great, and yeah, I was really impressed with it, and it was really great to see. So yeah, film credits are definitely I'll always sit and everyone else is getting up and rustling, and I'm like I'm staying put. I want to.
And look at their other work, right? Especially with the composer, look at the other work they've done and follow their. It's like with an artist, right? With a painter, like look at their old work and see how they ended. Like like Picasso. Picasso's most famous for those crazy pictures, but you can track his career to see how he got to there, right? And
Absolutely.
how he ended up at that as his final product. And I think you could probably do the same with any composer. Right.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Any composer and any sound team. I'm quite interested in the back. Who conducted it, or which studio did they use? And London seems to be prevalent in film music in terms of
Abbey Road's pretty big, and I think Air's pretty
Air's well, most of the remote control stuff's definitely Air.
And that's the most interesting thing is it doesn't matter where the film's made in the world, they quite often come to London to do the score.
Yeah,
because I think not only would you have incredible, you have an English-speaking country with fantastic recording studios. I think the UK technicians are some of the best in the world, and UK musicians are some of the best in the world.
Sight
London
reading
has a lot of them, so they're ready to go.
Yeah, but apparently we've got some of the best sight readers that they can turn up and do it.
Yeah,
and obviously time's money as well. So if someone can sort of just
especially with a full orchestra,
yeah, absolutely, time's money. So that's I've been in Abbey Road, Studio 1 and 2, just as for a tour, and I've met some of the kind of mastering engineers that work there or have worked there. One chap I'm talking to, Barry Grint, from Alchemy Mastering. I'm looking to try and. I don't, like I said, where I don't want to do my mix. I don't want to master my stuff anymore. So I'm starting to outsource it. I don't agree with it. I think it should be it's a different art, and it's someone else should have their ears on it.
Yes, everyone has a skill.
That's right, and you can't. Yes, we can buy mastering plugins, and we can kind of get there. But I want to press stuff to vinyl, and I need someone with the skills of to understand those sonic ranges that this tool needs to. So I appreciate. I'll pay for it, and I'll get it done. And why not get it done by Barry Grint? Someone who's well-to-do, knows what he's talking about. I think Los Angeles, like I say, I've been in the Barbra Streisand Sony scoring stage, which was incredible to see that console, that Neve in there. And you walk into the live room, and you kind of there's so many videos I've watched of orchestras playing in that room, and you can almost sense their presence. It's maybe I'm romanticizing this too much, but that was cool. So yeah, there's definitely some cool scoring stages, but you look at it, and it's kind of. I think it's definitely gear. I think that console in the Barbra Streisand room is definitely you can hear it on specific scores, and I think that's the same. I think Air is probably more about the space, with the gallery, and they've no hands.
Right.
So I think they've got the space, and obviously the consoles and the engineers are amazing. But I think different studios are categorized by different things, and I suppose maybe that's the same for sound stages.
Yeah, sound stages though are kind of they're not as good as they once were. The older ones are better, and as you could imagine, the industry has gone crazy in the last, say, 5 years, and they just can't build sound stages fast enough. So more often than not now, if I am filming in a studio, it's actually a converted studio from a factory of some description. It's not purpose-built soundstage. They try to do the best they can, but they're not perfect acoustically, Sometimes they literally are just an old factory, and we built a set in it.
Right, so it's getting. But I suppose if they need that, because the ones I've been to were at Sony.
Yeah, but technology is changing, right? Technology is adapting, and post sound can probably do more than they used to be able to do with with bad acoustics or things like that. We can remove probably noise better than we ever could before. And we can get a better sounding mic closer to an actor better than we ever could before. So, as we say, as technology adapts, we move forward. As technology changes, everything moves forward.
Absolutely. And, I think as well, everything changes, and I think the big thing was I remember years ago you were telling me, Mike, you've got to hear this Dolby Atmos sound. And I think we were.
I went to see Gravity.
And I can't remember. I can't remember either I couldn't make it or there was some problem with the second ticket. We couldn't. I don't think I couldn't go with you.
Yeah, it was at the Dolby Theatre in London.
That's right.
Yeah, it was great.
But now, obviously, with AMC buying up a lot of their own Odeon now and whatever else, and we're starting to see now in the Odeon Luxes in the UK that we've got Atmos built into the iSense screens.
Yeah.
And I've seen them being installed, and of course, I went. They were doing all the sort of sine wave tests where they're blasting the room, checking for bleed and all that sort of stuff, and installing these great big speakers and all these subs in the ceiling, and then EQing and balancing the room, and just looking at I've seen the processors, I suppose I've worked with them really, and I saw Star Wars, the latest Star Wars in there, and wow, I mean,
it's immersive, right?
It's incredible, mate. I mean, I was there with the family, and we all kind of left there like I was just like that is incredible. I mean, I'd seen the demos and the tests. I'd seen like the Dolby idents and there's an animated character sort of conducting stuff moving around you. But that was incredible, man. Like the light that you're vroom through the seat. Yeah. And the clarity of I couldn't hear any distortion that you sometimes do get on those old JBL. That they're loud, they can deal with loud volume, but occasionally I'm like, I think when that speaker sounds a bit distorted. Couldn't hear any distortion, crystal clear. Everything was spaced. Of course, you got all the ways to space it.
Yeah.
And I sat there and thought, wow, Mike was, this was like he was telling me about this in like 2015, 2016.
Yeah, 2013, I think it was. I went to see.
It was probably about
2014. Yeah, it was when Gravity came out.
And I bet that was incredible in it as well. So it makes me think, that I think is the and I've seen this as well. These sort of like is it HDX or something like that with music, where you've got to wear headphones and it really sounds like you're listening almost with your brain rather than your ears.
Yeah.
I'm actually, it's completely unorthodox and kind of mental, but hey, stereo sound at one point was unorthodox and mental.
I know. I was like, what's this? Like 2 tracks? You crazy? We're gonna transmit it over the radio.
Yeah. What? Yeah. So it's like I'm not archaic in that sense, and it would be interesting to try and make a track, or even more interestingly, a score. But then I feel like those two technologies are directly competing with each other, because for the 8DX stuff you need the headphones, whereas Atmos is kind of free and easy in the room, and I'm definitely more sided with the headphones off, free and easy in the room. But it would be great to have some. I believe they've got, you might probably know more than me, but I believe there's almost like a joystick remote control that they use for Atmos mixing.
Right. No, I don't know much about it. But yeah, that makes sense. And you would, like I said before, like you do the mix to your outputs. There's no point doing an Atmos mix for something that you're going to put on YouTube, right?
No.
And you would do an Atmos mix and you do the HDX mix, the other thing you were talking about with the headphones. Like you mix for what the final product is going to be.
That's right.
And absolutely. Do more than one, do more than one. So your film's going to be on YouTube. Mix it for, stereo. If you're going to show it in a cinema, then maybe pay someone to spend a day and make it 5.1.
Go from that. Well, this one I was going to ask you as well. Actually, Twickenham have got a mixing. They got a 5.1 facility.
Yeah.
And when I was pricing one film that was supposed to kind of be funded and well to do, I was going to go to them for a 5.1 mix.
Yeah.
Because it was in Twickenham and it was down the road from me, really.
I've been there actually. The film that I talked about earlier, Florence Foster Jenkins, we shot at Twickenham.
Okay.
Although there's only really one stage there, and also all the sound post was done there. So I went back to see them do some of the post.
Well, I kind of like the room, because the room I saw online is like they're in a cinema.
Yeah.
Like the room.
Well,
is like,
that's again, like I say, like any real mix for a cinema should be done in a cinema type environment with the speakers around you. Because how can you mix for a cinema on a small screen in your headphones, right? Same for grading, right? It needs to look right,
Well, grading as well is a weird one, because I remember starting again years ago, short film, and I started scoring it before it was graded.
Yeah.
They graded it and my score didn't work.
Right.
Because the colours just didn't. Music's quite. I see music in colours sometimes. It's almost like palettes that fit. Certain textures fit with colour, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
To maybe I'm just mad, and it just didn't. I had to redo I didn't redo the whole score, but I took the found, I changed the timbre of the fundamentals bit underneath it to fit that grade. So that's the whole thing as well. Again, man, it's just so much. There's so many areas that each one just affects each other.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it.
I got to get off. I got to go somewhere.
No problem at all, mate.
So I don't know if you're going to put a few scissors in there because we've been going for a while. If anyone makes it this far on the full cut, I'll buy you a pint.
Okay. No, I'm going to try
it. But I do live in Canada though, so it might be hard for you to get it. But
one day, mate. One day.
Probably why I offered it. But if anyone gets to watch the whole thing, then I'm impressed. But I'm sure maybe you'll cut it up a bit. But nice to talk to you,
mate. Pleasure.
Thanks for having me on your new podcast. And,
absolute pleasure. Thank you, mate.
I'll send this little file off to you.
This little file, about 10 gig.
Yeah. No, luckily it's only 2 tracks, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Shouldn't be too bad, mate. It's an absolute honour. Please look after yourself.
Yeah, same to you.
I'll be in touch soon. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I guess you'll put this up, and if I come across any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, please, guys, comment. Mike's there. Absolutely, it'll be on. It'll be a bit more difficult for the audio version, but for the video version, without question.
Yeah, great,
cool.
Thanks,
take care,
Mike.
man.
Speak soon.
See you later, dudes.
Bye.
Bye.